Chapter 3174. Chu Li knew what Liang Xing was thinking. If Liang Xing killed him and blamed it on someone else, he would be able to cover it up. If he were to escape and return to the Pavilion of Heavenly Mysteries and complain to the Pavilion Master, he would be in big trouble. Even if the Pavilion Master could not see through the 9th level of the Heavenly Heart technique, it did not hinder him from seeking confirmation from other sources. He would always be able to find some clues, and it would be very difficult to hide from him. That was why Liang Xing had to kill him. Bam 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 bam, palm after palm came. Chu Li frowned. Unless he used God's limbs, it would not be easy for him to escape with his current light body technique. However, he was not too worried. After all, he had the secret skill and could easily escape the formation. It was just a short loss of lifespan. It did not matter to him. He just needed to eat a few more life extension pills. Bam 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 bam, the two palm energies collided, creating a deep sound like pebbles falling into a deep well. Chu Li kept retreating. After eating so many life extension pills, his cultivation level was far higher than Liang Xing's. However, Liang Xing immediately activated the secret skill and his cultivation level doubled. It was probably a secret skill that burned his lifespan. Under such a secret skill, Chu Li was forced to retreat. He kept retreating until he was 100 meters away. "Ha, enter the formation!" A loud laugh suddenly rang out. The fat man who had been busy setting up the formation suddenly laughed and stretched. He looked at Chu Li mockingly. The scene in front of Chu Li suddenly changed. The pine forest suddenly turned into a towering cliff with a dark abyss below. He was standing on the edge of the cliff. If he took a step back, he would be in the abyss. Although Chu Li knew it was an illusion, he did not dare to retreat. An illusion formation was the shallowest formation. The old man would not have set up such a small formation to trap him. It must be a powerful formation mixed with illusions. Behind him was not the real cliff, but if he stepped out and fell, he would definitely be injured. It was not much different from falling off the cliff. This was the beauty of the formation. Liang Xing had already disappeared. There was nothing around him. Chu Li raised his voice and said, "Masters Junior Liang, who is this?" He could not see Liang Xing, and could only speak in the direction he came from. "Ha, little fellow, there's no harm in telling you. I'm Liang Wen, and I've come to help Big Brother deal with you." The laughter from all directions entered his ears, and he was unable to determine where it came from. Chu Li shook his head and said, "To kill a junior like me, you even have to send 2 seniors. I'm really flattered. Masters Junior Liang, could it be that your cultivation level has also reached the 9th level? Not bad." Liang Wen said with a smile, "That's why I'm not afraid of Pavilion Master finding out. Little guy, don't even think about Pavilion Master coming to save you. Your good days are coming." Chu Li scoffed. "Other than death, what else can you do? We will first cripple your martial arts, then throw you into the brothel. You should enjoy yourself. Being a rabbit is a rare experience." Liang Wen chuckled and said, "Only this way can we resolve Little Gu's hatred and get rid of his inner demons." Chu Li's face darkened. "How vicious! Ha, we train in the Heavenly Heart Sutra. The world is heartless, so how can it not be vicious?" Liang Wen chuckled and said, "The more vicious you are, the closer you are to the Heavenly Heart Sutra, the more refined your cultivation will be." Chu Li shook his head and said, "You've gone astray." "Ha, so what if I've gone astray?" Liang Wen laughed and said, "Little guy, just accept your fate." Chu Li said, "I have food with me. I can hold on for a month or 2 in the formation. If I don't return for a long time, Pavilion Master will find out and will definitely find me." "Ha," Liang Wen laughed again and said, "Do you think you can hold on for that long?" Suddenly, 2 palm energies appeared behind him without a sound. Chu Li moved sideways and easily avoided it. Just as he was about to land, another palm energy appeared behind him. He could only use his energy to move again and avoid it by a hair's breadth. Just as he was about to land, another palm energy appeared. He could not sense the two people in the formation, so he could not see their palms. He could only sense the palm energy when it was close to his body. Even if he had the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture to transform the force and could repeatedly turn his body, it was still impossible to guard against it. This was the power of the formation, it could obscure the intuition of grandmasters. He took the palm attack head-on. Pop! This palm attack was exceptionally fierce and overbearing. He somersaulted and fell down the cliff. Ha ha! A loud laugh came from all directions. Chu took a deep breath and activated the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture, forcefully reversing the force. He used the force to float up and flew diagonally up the cliff. However, he was met with another palm attack. Chu suddenly disappeared on the spot. The next moment, he performed the Deva shedding technique. The formation dissipated, and he could see everything in front of him. The fat and strong Liang one was not far in front of him, only 3 steps away. Chu suddenly had an idea and suddenly waved his hands. Then, he threw out a divine light fist. The distance was too close. 2 electric lights instantly shot into Liang Wen's fat and strong body. One shot into his left eye and the other shot into his heart. One knife was stained with blood while the other knife was stained with blood and brain matter. They shot out from the back of his head and back and into a pine tree, disappearing without a trace. Bang! The divine light fist hit him in the heart. Liang Wen stretched out his limbs and his fat and strong body flew out as if he was being pulled by a few horses. He crashed into the old pine tree that the flying knife had pierced. Crack! The old pine tree broke in the middle but did not block Liang Wen's body. Liang Wen continued to crash into another old pine tree. Bang! The second old pine tree blocked Liang Wen's path. Liang Wen slid down the pine tree softly, as if he had no bones. The divine light fist had already crushed all his internal organs, and he could not be more dead than he was. Little brother! Liang Xing cried. Chu floated out of the formation and turned into a stream of light. He performed the divine light body. The divine light body was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, he had shot 10 miles away. Hee hee! Liang Xing's sorrowful laughter rang in his ears. His omniscient mirror had already seen Liang Xing chasing after him like a stream of light. In the blink of an eye, he was already in front of him. His speed was far faster than the divine light body. Chu ignored him and continued forward. He was not in a hurry to use God's limbs. He would not use God's limbs unless necessary. It was his last resort. I swear I'm not human if I don't kill you, Liang Xing shouted. He was sorrowful and blamed himself. He was so angry and guilty that he wanted to burn himself up. Initially, he thought he could deal with Chu by himself. However, Chu had always been cautious and meticulous. Just in case, he asked his little brother, Liang Wen, to help him. When fighting a tiger, it was a battle between father and son. He could only ask his brother for help. He never thought that this would cost his little brother his life. His little brother's pitiful state appeared in his mind. Boundless anger and killing intent drove him crazy. He performed his most powerful secret skill. Every breath he took was equivalent to a year of his lifespan in exchange for 10 times his power. Chu laughed. Masters Junior Liang, don't blame others. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself. You had evil intentions and wanted to harm me. Instead of harming others, you harmed yourself. That's why you ended up like this. Heaven has eyes. Chapter 3175. Chu knew that Liang Xing would be enraged the moment he spoke, so he sped up and dodged the palm. He then took out a jade talisman and yelled, "Activate the formation!" Liang Xing felt the scene in front of him change, and he was suddenly in the middle of a desert. He used the heavenly heart technique to suppress his anger and regain his calmness. He tensed his body to guard against a sudden attack, and turned his head to look around. He was surrounded by yellow sand. A gust of wind blew and fine sand fell on his face. He wiped it away and realized that it was real sand. He frowned in confusion. Did he really move himself into the middle of a desert? Otherwise, no matter how powerful the formation was, it was impossible to create a desert out of nothing in the middle of a forest. Chuli stood at the wind's edge and took out a handful of sand from his sleeves to scatter it. He then disappeared from the spot and shot into the distance. Liang Xing's mind was in a mess. His mind was not as agile and his reaction was not sharp enough. He had not remembered to use the deva shedding technique to break the formation. This was the best opportunity for Chuli to escape. He had been on guard against Liang Xing because his instincts told him that Liang Xing would not be that kind. To prevent Liang Xing from ambushing him, he had secretly set up several formations along the way. They were not activated and a single talisman could activate the formation. He did not expect it to be useful at such a crucial moment. Without God's limbs, he could not escape from Liang Xing, who was burning his life force. In this state, Liang Xing was like a ghost or a god and was extremely terrifying. Under the cover of the formation, he disappeared without a trace. Liang Xing roared and suddenly reacted. He used the deva shedding technique and flew out of the formation. The surrounding was dense and lush forest. There was no desert. Chuli had disappeared without a trace, and there was no way to chase after him. Ah! Liang Xing was enraged and roared. The roar was sorrowful and filled with endless hatred. The beasts in the forest were lying motionless in their nest. Liang Xing returned to Liang Wen's side and took out a spirit pill to stuff into his mouth. However, he could not stuff it in at all. Liang Wen's body was completely stiff. He pried open his mouth and shoved the pill in and hit a few acupuncture points. Unfortunately, the snow-white pill was stuck in his mouth. It slowly melted but could not flow down. Ah dash! Liang Xing roared again. When he saw the brain at the back of Liang Wen's head, he knew that even the spirit pill that could bring the dead back to life was useless. Not only had the flying knife pierced through his head, but the force of the knife had also shattered his head, turning it into a paste. He could not be more dead. He looked down at Liang Wen's chest, gritted his teeth, and tears fell down, wetting the front of Liang Wen's shirt. He no longer wasted his efforts, and returned to the pavilion of heavenly secrets with Liang Wen's corpse. As soon as he returned to the small courtyard, a beautiful middle-aged woman screamed and rushed forward. "Little uncle, he? Dead," Liang Xing said coldly. His face was as pale as a sheet of paper. The aftereffects of using the secret technique were starting to show. The beautiful middle-aged woman exclaimed, "How is that possible? Why not?" Liang Xing glared at her coldly. The beautiful middle-aged woman hurriedly said, "I'll ask Senior Brother Lu to see if he can be saved." Without waiting for Liang Xing to reply, she turned around and shot out. Liang Xing placed Liang Wen on the table and looked down at him. He gritted his teeth and disappeared in a flash. The next moment, he appeared in Song Wu's small courtyard. Song Wu was practicing the 9 kills palm. She was dressed in black, and her delicate and beautiful face was flushed. She was charming like a blooming rose. "Senior Uncle Liang?" She felt someone and turned around. She stopped and cupped her fist. "Senior Uncle Liang, what's the matter?" Even if he was an elder, it was rude of him to break into the small courtyard without making a sound. Moreover, she was a woman. "Are you familiar with Su Han?" Liang Xing asked coldly. Song Wu nodded. "Junior brother Su?" "Yes, he's in seclusion." "Very good." Liang Xing smiled coldly and stepped in front of Song Wu. He slammed his palm on her lower abdomen and shattered it with the power of the 9 kills palm. Song Wu felt all the energy in her body rushing toward her dantian like a flood that had broken a dam. In the blink of an eye, she became weak and her body suddenly became as heavy as a mountain. She couldn't even lift her arms. Everything happened so fast that she couldn't react in time. She never thought that the righteous and just Liang Xing would sneak an attack on her. She was caught off guard. Before she could react, everything was over. Senior Uncle Liang, you? She opened her red lips in disbelief. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself for knowing Su Hun. Liang Xing sneered and suddenly disappeared. Song Wu watched him disappear in a daze. She lowered her head to look at herself and then lifted her arms. She finally realized that her martial arts had been destroyed by Master Liang. Liang Xing fluttered back to his small courtyard. Other than a beautiful middle-aged woman, there were 2 elders in the courtyard. They examined Liang Wen's corpse with gloomy expressions and shook their heads. When they heard the movement, they turned to look at Liang Xing. The elder with white eyebrows and a baby-like face said, "Elder Liang, how did you provoke the disciples of the Holy Church of Light?" Junior brother Young Liang was killed by the Holy Church of Light. The Holy Church of Light. Liang Xing frowned and his face darkened. It's actually the Holy Church of Light? You don't know it's the Holy Church of Light? The elder with white hair and a youthful face frowned. Then how did you get into a conflict? Liang Xing thought about it and swallowed his words. He stopped talking about Chu Li and said coldly, "They suddenly appeared. Junior brother and I couldn't react in time and were ambushed." He did not expect Su Hun to be a disciple of the Holy Church of Light. He felt a chill in his heart when he thought about it. The Holy Church of Light was able to let their disciple enter the prophecy pavilion without anyone noticing. They even managed to hide from the pavilion leader. How terrifying! The 2 elders from the Holy Church of Light looked as if their faces had frozen. They sneered. How dare they? Do they think they can afford to offend us just because we're not one of the 8 sects? Maybe it's revenge. The other elder said, "We sent someone to investigate the Great Light Peak. Junior brother Lu died, so we delayed the investigation. We didn't settle the score with them, but they came to take revenge first." "Where were you attacked?" "It's not far from us, about 1,000 miles, Liang Xing said. "Indeed, they came for us." The elder with white hair and a youthful face said coldly, "Junior brother Su, it's a pity. He was too careless. He could have been saved if he had been shot in the head by the light blade." "That's fate." The other elder sighed. "It's a pity that the pavilion leader couldn't find him on the 9th floor and couldn't warn him. I'll personally report this to the pavilion leader." Masters Junior Liang. Masters Junior Liang. Disciple Chu Xiao requests an audience. A loud shout came from outside. Liang Xing frowned and looked impatient. He said coldly, "What's the matter? I want to ask Masters Junior Liang why you crippled Junior Sister Song's martial arts." Chu Xiao shouted. Everyone looked at Liang Xing. Liang Xing said coldly, "Come in." He stretched out his hand and pulling open the courtyard gate through the void. Chu Xiao entered the courtyard and was stunned when he saw the 3 of them. He then gave them a fist salute. "Greetings, Masters Junior Liang. I don't understand why you crippled Junior Sister Song's martial arts for no reason." Chapter 3176. Could it be that Junior Sister Song did something wrong? Chu Xiao replied in a tone that was neither servile nor overbearing. Even if Junior Sister Song did something wrong and is punished by having her martial arts crippled, it should be handled by the punishment hall. Junior Master Liang, if you act rashly, wouldn't it be against the pavilion's rules? Liang Xing sneered. You have a good relationship with Su Hun, right? It's just an ordinary friendship, Chu Xiao said with a frown. That's good. Liang Xing scoffed coldly. Su Wu is a spy from the Holy Church of Light. If it weren't for him, we wouldn't have been ambushed by the Holy Church of Light and my little brother wouldn't have lost his life. Everyone was shocked to hear this. Impossible, right? The white-haired old man, Lu Shi, frowned and said, If he's a spy, how could he escape the pavilion master's eyes? Maybe he didn't have any problems in the beginning, Liang Xing said. Lu Shi shook his head. If he really is a traitor, he won't be able to hide it from the pavilion master. The pavilion master could see through a person's fate. If Su-hun had really become a traitor, he would not have been able to hide it from the pavilion master, and he would not have allowed him to enter the pavilion in the first place. Hence, there were many doubts about this matter. He looked at Liang Xing with some suspicion. Liang Xing scoffed. This brat lured us into the formation. If it weren't for the formation's interference, the people from the Holy Church of Light wouldn't have been able to kill me. Maybe he's being used by the Holy Church of Light, Lu Shi said. No matter what, he did not believe that Su-hun would become a traitor. Moreover, he also knew about the grudge between Su-hun and Tan-gu. He understood that Liang Xing and Liang Wen must have gone to teach Su-hun a lesson. Unfortunately, they encountered a trap and were ambushed, causing them to lose their lives. He really didn't know what to say. It was a bit too much to say that he deserved it, but it still felt like he was reaping what he sowed. Liang Xing gritted his teeth and said slowly, "Senior brother Lu, you must avenge me no matter what. We must deal with the Holy Church of Light. We should also establish our authority and let the world know how powerful the Prophecy Pavilion is." Not bad. Lu Shi nodded. He had a deep hatred for the Holy Church of Light. Junior brother Lu, who had died, was his best friend, but he had died at the Great Light Peak without a proper burial. Chu Xiao said in a low voice, "Martial Uncle Liang, even if junior brother Su is a spy, junior sister Song wouldn't know. How could she be implicated by him? Crippling her martial arts can be considered as a lesson to her." Liang Xing said coldly, "Let her know how to respect herself and keep her eyes open. I heard that she fell in love with that Su brat, is that right?" Chu Xiao hurriedly shook his head and said, "No. This matter ends here, get out," Liang Xing said coldly. Chu Xiao glared at him, unconvinced. "What, you also want to cripple my martial arts?" Liang Xing sneered. "You think I don't dare?" Chu Xiao glanced at Liang Wen's corpse on the ground, and then looked at Liang Xing's bloodshot eyes. He knew that Liang Xing had gone crazy, otherwise he wouldn't have done such a crazy thing as crippling junior sister Song's martial arts. A wise man knows better than to fight when the odds are against him. He could only lie low for now and then complain to the pavilion master to seek justice for junior sister Song. He cupped his fists and turned to leave. The young disciples nowadays all think that they are the best in the world. Liang Xing sneered and turned his head. "Senior brother Lu, I must avenge my younger brother. Regardless of whether the pavilion master agrees to destroy the Holy Church of Light or not, I'll do it anyway." "You!" Lu Shi shook his head and said no more. "You better be careful, the Holy Church of Light is not made of paper. I want them to know the consequences of offending the Prophecy Pavilion." Liang Xing gritted his teeth and said slowly. Chu Li returned to the Spirit Crane's peak. The two cranes shot toward him like two rays of white light, but they suddenly stopped and did not attack him. Their eyes were sharp and their intuition was amazing. They noticed that Chu Li was injured and looked at him curiously. Chu Li went forward and patted their wings. He smiled and said, "I fought with someone and was slightly injured, but I won." The two cranes let out a clear cry. They were extremely intelligent, even more so than humans. Chu Li, Xiao Shi, and Shao Qi had been here so many times that they could already understand their word. Chu Li sat cross-legged on a boulder. He activated the Life and Death Scripture and the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture at the same time to quickly recover from his injuries. He had to return to the Great Light Peak as soon as possible. This time, he had risked being injured to gain the upper hand. Otherwise, it would have been really dangerous. He was quite proud of the idea he had when he made his move. He directly put the blame on the Holy Church of Light, which should be able to provoke a conflict between the two sections. Next, he would have to see if he could muddy the waters. Only by taking advantage of the situation would he have a chance to obtain the Star Stone. He slowly smiled as he activated the Heavenly Heart technique. He realized that the Heavenly Heart technique had indeed improved a little. His sense of closeness to heaven and earth was stronger, the life and death scripture was more agile, and the omniscient mirror was clearer. As far as he knew, the progress of the heavenly heart technique was slow after reaching the 9th level. It almost could not be improved at all. It would take hundreds of years to perfect it. It was a great surprise to be able to improve so quickly. When he fought with Liang Xing, the heavenly heart technique did not change. However, after he killed Liang Wen, the heavenly heart technique suddenly changed and suddenly improved. At that time, he did not have the time to carefully experience it. Now that he studied it carefully, it was indeed not an illusion. His thoughts turned quickly and suddenly, a light bulb went off in his head. Could it be that killing disciples who also cultivated the heavenly heart technique could actually improve the heavenly heart technique? Was this like the heavenly demonic sex, heavenly demonic spirit devouring technique? If that was the case, it would be a shocking secret that no one would tell anyone. Could it be that Liang Xing had cultivated him to the 9th level before killing him? One of the reasons was to hide it from the pavilion leader, and the other was to improve the heavenly heart technique? He then shook his head. It was easy to verify this conjecture. He would find out after killing Liang Xing. After eating 2 fruits, his internal injuries recovered. Then, he bid farewell to the 2 cranes and suddenly disappeared. The next moment, he appeared at the Great Light Peak. He obediently went into isolated cultivation at the Great Light Peak. 5 days later, a long howl suddenly sounded and shook the entire Great Light Peak. Even with the protection of the formation, the entire Great Light Peak could hear it. A moment later, Sun Mingyue arrived in a white tunic. Chu Li stopped howling and looked at Sun Mingyue with a smile. "Saint, how's my cultivation level?" This time, he had concealed half of his cultivation level. On the surface, it seemed like his cultivation level had doubled. He was confident that he was only inferior to the saint in the Holy Church of Light. Sun Mingyue wore a white veil and her eyes were clear as water. She smiled. It's worth going into isolated cultivation for so long. It's really impressive." This time, Chu Li had been in isolated cultivation for half a year. His skills had actually doubled. He was truly a genius. If this continued, he would soon surpass everyone else and become the top master in the Holy Church of Light. He would only be inferior to her. Chu Li laughed and glided down the bed. He suddenly noticed that Sun Mingyue was not in a good mood. He smiled. Did something happen? Sun Mingyue had always been as calm as still water. Even when something big happened, her emotions would not fluctuate. It could be said that she was unfathomable. However, at this moment she was showing a gloomy aura, which was very unusual. Something happened, Sun Mingyue said. She turned around and said, "Follow me to the basilica to discuss matters." Chu Li followed her out of the formation and left the crystal-like peak. They arrived at the Divine Light Basilica. There were 3 men standing in the basilica. One was Fong Qingyang, another was a middle-aged man, and the last was an old man with a withered face. Chapter 3177. This was the corpse of a middle-aged man. He had never seen him before but knew that he was no ordinary person. Otherwise, the 3 of them would not have looked so gloomy and their eyes flashed with anger and murderous intent. Chu Li, this is He Shijian, priest He. Sun Mingyue pointed at the corpse on the ground, and then at the elder. Lu Chenyu, priest Lu. She pointed at the bald middle-aged man. Cheng Siyu, priest Cheng. She then pointed at Chu Li. Zhao Dave. Fong Qingyang stared at He Shijian on the ground with a gloomy expression. He did not look at Chu Li. Lu Chenyu and Cheng Siyu looked at Chu Li and nodded slowly. They had heard of Zhao Dave for a long time, but it was their first time meeting him. They felt that he was not as ugly as the rumors said, and everyone was exaggerating. In fact, upon closer inspection, his face had a unique charm. Chu Li fist saluted and looked at He Shijian's corpse. "What happened to priest He?" He went to the great light surpassing state, Sun Mingwe said. Chu Li frowned. There aren't many people in the world who can make a priest enter the great light surpassing state, right? Yes, Sun Mingwe said. See if you recognize the martial art. The white-haired and ruddy Lu Chenyu scoffed. Isn't the saint making things difficult for branch leader Zhao? They could not tell what kind of injury it was and did not think that Chu Li could. Although they felt that Chu Li's cultivation level was not inferior to theirs or even higher, it could not make up for his lack of experience. Sun Mingwe did not comment and gave Chu Li a look, indicating that he should take a look. Chu Li Fist saluted the three of them and bowed to the corpse before going forward to take a look. He took a look and said, 9 Kills Palm, Prophecy Pavilion. It really is the 9 Kills Palm? Sun Mingwe scoffed. Chu Li nodded. The 9 Kills Palm not only kills the body but also the soul. Therefore, those killed by the 9 Kills Palm can't be saved even if they have spirit pills that can bring the dead back to life. Fortunately, priest he reacted quickly and went to the great light surpassing state. If one did not go to the great light surpassing state, those killed by the 9 Kills Palm would not have a chance to reincarnate and would be completely turned into ashes. This was the viciousness of Prophecy Pavilion's martial art. Is it really the 9 Kill Palm? Ching Siu, who had a shiny bald head and a solemn expression, said in surprise, Little Zhao, you actually recognize the 9 Kill Palm? Chu Li nodded and said, I've dealt with the Prophecy Pavilion a few times and suffered a few losses. Is the Pavilion of Heavenly Mysteries really so formidable? Ching Siu said, they were actually able to kill us. After ascending to the position of Guardian King, one could be said to be a rare master in the world. Even if they could not win, they could still escape, and it was difficult for their lives to be in danger. He Shijian's death made them feel cold and angry. The strength of the Tianji Pavilion is comparable to the 8 great sects of the Fu dynasty. Dharma King Qing, do you think they are powerful or not? Sun Mingwe said coldly. Fang Qingyang gritted his teeth and sneered. Saint, we must avenge this. Of course. Sun Mingwe nodded. Lu Chenyu asked, Saintess, how should we deal with them? Chu Li said, I know where their lair is, but the disciples of the Divine Prophecy Pavilion have the divination skill, so they can seek fortune and avoid calamity. It's not easy to kill them, so setting up an ambush is useless. According to what you've said, young branch leader Zhao, we can't deal with them? Ching Siu asked. Chu Li nodded slowly. It's easy for them to kill us, but it's difficult for us to kill them. Don't flatter others and diminish our own morale. Fang Qingyang scoffed. No matter how powerful they are, they're not the 8 major sections. Besides, even the disciples of the 8 major sects aren't that difficult to kill. Lu Chenyu said, actually, it's not difficult. Since we know where their lair is, we can just surround them and kill them as soon as they come out. The Pavilion of Heavenly Mysteries doesn't have that many disciples, so I don't believe that we can't kill them with all of our high officials. Good idea. High officials are most useful at this time. Ching Siu rubbed his shiny head. These words were obviously meant to block his way out. Chu Li smiled awkwardly and avoided her gaze, looking as if he had been seen through. Why, does young branch leader Zhao have a grudge against the Pavilion of Heavenly Mysteries? Lu Chenyu asked. Chu Li said, to be honest, Priest Lu, I have a deep grudge against the Pavilion of Heavenly Mysteries. They actually spread rumors that I'm Chu Li from the Ji dynasty and that I'm a traitor. If it weren't for the saint's wisdom, I would have been killed by them. No wonder. Lu Chenyu suddenly realized. It was no wonder that Zhao Dai was so familiar with the Pavilion of Heavenly Mysteries. It seemed that he wanted revenge, so he put in the effort to find out more about the Pavilion of Heavenly Mysteries than they did. Sun Mingwe said, I've already killed Chu Li with my own hands, so this rumor fell apart on its own. However, the Pavilion of Heavenly Mysteries divination skill can kill people without them noticing. A few rumors can have an invisible effect, so we have to be careful. If we want to deal with them, we have to do as Zhao Dai said and destroy them in one fell swoop. Chu Li said, but I'm worried that they can predict that we're going to deal with them in large numbers and already have a countermeasure. There's no need to predict, they should know, Sun Minghua said. Let's rely on our own strength. Priest Lu, you and Priest Qing will bring all the Azuras to the Fu Dynasty's Cloud Dream Mountain. Priest Fang, bring a few top-notch high officials to support them. Yes. The three of them gave a fist salute and replied. Chu Li's heart skipped a beat when he heard about the Azuras, but his expression remained stern as he said, Saint, I want to do my part too. You? Sun Minghua frowned. Go back first. Don't interfere in this matter. Chu Li frowned. Saint. Sun Minghua said, you've lost your cool because you want to take revenge. You're the branch leader of Gale Branch, how can you not return after so long? You should settle the matters in the branch first. Yes. Chu Li's face turned pale as he gave a fist salute. I'll go back now. Goodbye. Go. Sun Minghua waved her hand. Chu Li gave a fist salute to the three of them before he turned around and strode away. He looked like he was extremely angry. The three of them found it funny. Zhao Dai was too bold to give the saint a hard time. Chapter 3178. Sun Minghua shook her head. He's too bold and shouldn't make any more contributions. I'm planning to suppress him and temper him. With his current temper, it's not suitable for him to ascend to a high position. That's true. He's too young. Lu Qinyu nodded slowly and glanced at Fang Qingyang. His temperament is different from Xiao Fang's. Fang Qingyang said, Zhao Dai's indeed bad-tempered and condescending. He looks down on everyone except the saint. The three of us are the same. Indeed, he needs to be tempered, Lu Qinyu said. Qing Siyu said, Saint, once Azura enters the Fu dynasty, there'll be huge repercussions. Sun Minghua said calmly, the pavilion of heavenly prophecy can predict the workings of the heavens, but the Azuras are beings from the outer heavens, so we can't hide from them. You guys lay in ambush at the side and wait for the high officials to make their move. Yes. Lu Qinyu and Qing Siyu gave a fist salute. Sun Minghua waved her hand. Go. The two turned and left. Sun Minghua looked at Fang Qingyang and said, You look hesitant. Is it because of Li Hanyan? Saint Fang Qingyang could not open his mouth. He knew that he was too selfish, but this matter was too dangerous. He was on tenterhooks if Li Hanyan were to make a move. Do as you see fit, Sun Minghua said. Yes. Fang Qingyang showed a bitter expression. He gave a fist salute and left the Divine Light Basilica with heavy step. His heart felt heavy as if it was weighed down by a rock. He came to the steps in front of the basilica and looked up at the blue sky. After a long time, he let out a long sigh and stomped his feet. He clenched his teeth and walked down the steps. Chu Li returned to Gale Branch in a flash. He first dealt with the chores. Ko Qiong and the other two had handled everything in an orderly manner. He did not have to worry about them, so his absence did not affect the operation of Gale Branch. After he returned to his courtyard, he suddenly disappeared and reappeared at the foot of the Cloud Dream Mountain. He transformed into Su Shu and glided into the Prophecy Pavilion. He did not want to expose his ability to change his appearance by the sea yet. He came back to find a chance to obtain star stones so that it would not be convenient for him to enter and exit the Cloud Dream Mountain when the Holy Church of Light surrounded it. He scanned the area with the omniscient mirror. Other than a few basilicas that he could not see through, all the other courtyards appeared in his mind. He looked at his courtyard. There was no one in sight and no ambush. He was a little surprised. Could it be that Liang Xing had not exposed his crimes? He thought about it and felt that it was highly possible. Perhaps he would just swallow his pride to avoid exposing their own shameful deeds. Even though he didn't see any ambush, he didn't return to his own courtyard. Instead, he appeared in a nearby courtyard and sat at a stone table to observe the sound of the beam. However, after scanning the omniscient mirror, he could not find Liang Xing. It seemed like he was not in the prophecy pavilion. Could it be that he went to the stargazing pavilion? He looked at Song Wu and his expression changed. He found that Song Wu's kung fu had been completely destroyed. She sat beside the stone table with a haggard face and stared at the foot of the wall absent-mindedly. Her eyes were dim, and there was not a trace of high spirit and fighting spirit. She was like a walking corpse. Chu Li glided over the top of the wall and landed in front of Song Wu. He said in a deep voice, "Senior Sister Song." Song Wu slowly turned her head to look at him, and stood up. "Junior Martial Brother Su." Chu Li frowned. "Who destroyed your kung fu?" "Why?" Song Wu looked at him with a complicated expression. "Junior Martial Brother Su, are you a disciple of the Holy Church of Light?" Chu Li was stunned and finally shook his head slowly. "I'm not a disciple of the Holy Church of Light. At that time, Liang Xing and Liang Wen set up a formation to kill me to avenge Tan Gu. I was unwilling to be captured, so we fought. At the crucial moment, a disciple of the Holy Church of Light appeared and killed Liang Wen." "So you're not a disciple of the Holy Church of Light?" "No," Chu Li said in a deep voice. He was not lying to her. He was indeed not a disciple of the Holy Church of Light. He was the chief of the Glories Will courtyard in the Ji public house. Song Wu's expression recovered a little. She said in a deep voice, "Now that Masters Junior Liang is framing you as a spy from the Holy Church of Light, you should quickly go to the pavilion leader to defend yourself so that Masters Junior Liang doesn't have a chance to attack." Chu Li nodded slowly. As expected of a couple. What a sweet scene. With a cold laugh, Liang Xing and another elder floated into the courtyard. The surrounding scenery suddenly changed and formed a formation. Chu Li scoffed. No wonder the omniscient mirror could not see them. They had set up a formation to hide their figures. He frowned and stared at the two of them. "Masters Junior Liang, I didn't expect you to be so despicable. How dare you frame me as a disciple of the Holy Church of Light?" Liang Xing stared at him with a gloomy expression. "Cunning boy, I've really misjudged you," Chu Li said. "This has nothing to do with Senior Martial Sister Song. Why did you vent your anger on her and cripple her martial arts? How you treat the younger disciples is really despicable. No wonder Tan Gu dared to steal other disciples' sky-soaring pills. He learned it from you. What a nest of snakes and rat. It's sad that we have an elder like you in the prophecy pavilion." "Shut up!" Liang Xing shouted. The veins on his neck bulged. He gritted his teeth and said coldly, "You have a sharp tongue. Show off your tongue. Die." He struck with his palm. Chu Li took a step to the side and avoided it. He continued, "The pavilion leader doesn't know how arrogant you are. I must complain to the pavilion leader. You're an elder but you want to kill a younger disciple because of a nephew. I'm at the 9th level of the Heavenly Heart technique, and I'm treated like this. What about the other disciples?" He turned to look at the other elder and said, "Masters Junior, are you in cahoots with him?" "What a clever boy." Lu Shi smiled. "Your Heavenly Heart technique is at the 9th level?" "That's right." Chu Li said, "Masters Junior, can't you tell?" "Sigh, what a pity." Lu Shi shook his head. "You shouldn't have offended Elder Liang. I owe him a favor. I can only kill you." "You're killing a genius like me just because of a favor? You don't care how much damage the prophecy pavilion will suffer?" Chu Li frowned. Lu Shi smiled. "The prophecy pavilion's disciples are all geniuses. You're not one of them. Especially someone like you who disrespects your elders can't be left alive. Young boy, you don't have to waste your breath. Just do it." Liang Xing scoffed. "Elder Lu, don't be careless. This boy's cultivation level is high. He's pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly shrunk his body and activated his secret skill again. He became thin and short, and his speed was as fast as lightning. In an instant, he slapped Chu Li, leaving him no time to dodge. Bam, 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 bam. Chu Li continued to block the attack. There was no other way. His surroundings had changed. It had turned into a forest. There was no courtyard, no walls, and no gate. He wanted to break through the formation, so he activated the Deva shedding technique. Just as he was about to escape, a palm energy hit his back. Bam! He flew out like a stone thrown by a catapult. He slammed into a wall, causing it to tremble and almost collapse. He felt his internal organs churn a few times. It was as if he was being twisted by a knife. The pain was unbearable. He spat out a mouthful of black blood. His body seemed to be embedded into the wall, unable to move. Energy surged in his body and continued to destroy it. It was as if someone was constantly pressing against him and exerting force. Chapter 3179. Lu Shi's eyes were sharp. The moment Chu Li used the Devahuman shedding technique, his body slowed down. This was something that could not be overcome. Even if he could multitask and activate different heart techniques at the same time, different heart techniques would conflict in his body, so he could only use the Devahuman shedding technique first. This moment of delay was seized by Lu Shi. Using the power of the formation, he struck Chu Li with his palm and severely injured him. Chu Li watched as Liang Xing approached him like a ghost. The 9-kill palm was about to hit him. He shook violently and the wall suddenly rumbled. The moment it collapsed, he drilled out of the wall and left the range of the formation. He turned around and ran. "If you run, we'll kill Song Wu," Lu Shi said in a low voice. Chu Li did not turn his head and shouted, "This is the Prophecy Pavilion, not a place for you to do whatever you want. You've wrongly accused me, Su Hun, and you want to kill senior sister Song. Where is the justice?" His shout echoed throughout the Prophecy Pavilion. His body suddenly sped up and shot out of the Prophecy Pavilion. "Ah!" Liang Xing roared and chased after him. Chu Li's voice came from afar. "I don't believe that the Pavilion Master will let you do whatever you want. He'll definitely give me justice, and give senior sister Song justice." Liang Xing chased and shouted, "Bastard, if you're not guilty, then don't run, you traitor of the Holy Church of Light." Although he wanted to kill Chu Li with one palm, he did not have the thought of risking his life like last time. After all, Liang Wen had been dead for a few days. His grief was not as strong as before, and he was worried about his lifespan. If he continued to burn it, it would shorten his lifespan by a lot, and he would not live for more than a few days. It was not worth it for such a guy. The sect could kill him, and he would not be able to escape. Moreover, he saw that Chu Li was heavily injured, and he could take care of him without risking his life. "Whether I'm a traitor or not, the Pavilion Master has the final say." "You don't." Chu Li's voice came again. It was thin and light, but it clearly spread throughout the Prophecy Pavilion. "Ah!" Liang Xing was furious. He sped up again, and he could already see Chu Li's back. Lu Shi's movement technique was extraordinarily fast as he followed closely behind. He shook his head and said, "Forget it, old Liang. We can't catch up. This brat's cultivation is really powerful." Even the bluestone would have been cut in half by his solid palm strike. Su Hun's flesh and blood body must have been severely injured, but he was still able to run so fast. Clearly, he had activated a secret technique. Once he activated his secret technique with all his might, they would have no hope of catching up to him, unless they risked their lives and burned their lifespans like he did. He had only made a move because of a favor. It was not worth it, so he thought of retreating. Liang Xing gritted his teeth. "I want to avenge my little brother. Revenge is not in a short period of time. I reckon that after this, he will only have half a life left. When we return, we will ask the Pavilion Master to come out of seclusion and calculate his position." Liang Xing hesitated for a moment. Moreover, he still cares about Little Song. As long as Little Song is in the pavilion, he won't have to worry about where he can escape to. Lu Shi said in a low voice, your current situation is not good either, you have to take care of your body. If something unexpected happens to you, what will happen to Xiao Gu? Liang Xing nodded slowly and stopped walking. The two had already left the prophecy pavilion and turned around to walk back. Chu Li hid behind a tree and spat out another mouthful of blood. Spiritual energy surged from all directions and enveloped his body. It was as if he was immersed in a hot spring. His whole body was indescribably comfortable. Although Lu Shi's palm strike was powerful, the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture had dissipated most of the force. Moreover, his body was much stronger than before, so his injuries were not as serious. After a short period of spiritual energy to heal himself, he had mostly recovered. He pondered for a moment and silently returned to the prophecy pavilion. The conversation between Chu Li and Liang Xing had stirred up a pond of spring water. The pavilion of prophecy was bustling with activity. Groups of 2s and 3s gathered in a small courtyard to discuss the matter. They were especially concerned about Song Wu. Chu Li found Tan Gu at a glance. He was surrounded by a few people in his courtyard and kept asking questions. He glanced over and saw Liang Xing. Lu Shi had already left his courtyard and returned to his own courtyard. He hid in a room silently, waiting for Tan Gu to scold those people away. Then, in a flash, he appeared behind Tan Gu and silently restrained him. Chu Li's expression changed and his figure followed suit. Soon, he turned into Tan Gu's appearance. He dispersed his cultivation level and used the life and death scripture to hide in the void. Then, he slowly walked toward Liang Xing's courtyard. He heard the conversation between Liang Xing and Lu Shi and knew that the pavilion master was in isolated cultivation. Therefore, his previous words probably did not alarm the pavilion master. This made him heave a sigh of relief. It was fine as long as the pavilion master was not alarmed. The person he was most afraid of was the pavilion master. He secretly laughed at himself for worrying over nothing. He felt that the pavilion master had been staring at him. It seemed like he was just scaring himself. The pavilion master could not come out of isolated cultivation. Chu Li was unusually bold and wanted to return to teach Liang Xing a lesson. He arrived outside Liang Xing's courtyard and gently knocked on the door. The beautiful middle-aged woman glided over and opened the door. When she saw him, she smiled. "Young Gu, why are you here?" Chu Li said casually. "Aunt, come and see uncle-in-law." The beautiful middle-aged woman gently shook her head. "Your uncle-in-law is in a fit of anger. Why are you here?" Chu Li said, "Didn't uncle-in-law teach that guy a lesson? That guy is very difficult to deal with. Your uncle-in-law is scolding him." The beautiful middle-aged woman shook her head and entered the main hall. When he entered the main hall, he saw Liang Xing's face was pale but his eyes were burning. He was pacing back and forth with his hands behind his back while muttering curses. When he saw Chu Li and Tan Gu's appearance, Liang Xing glared at him and scoffed angrily. "You bastard, what are you doing here?" "Uncle-in-law." Chu Li shrunk his neck and helplessly said, "Calm down. It's not worth getting angry over that guy." "What do you know?" Liang Xing angrily scoffed. "He killed my little brother. Do you think I'm avenging you?" Chu Li helplessly shook his head. He took the teacup that the beautiful middle-aged woman brought over and smiled. "Aunt, I have something to say to uncle-in-law." "You little brat, you still have things to hide from me." The beautiful middle-aged woman rolled her eyes at him and pursed her lips into a smile. Then, she turned around and left. Chu Li personally served the tea to Liang Xing. Liang Xing reached out and took it. Chu Li's sudden punch passed through his arms and hit Liang Xing's chest. It was a solid punch. Liang Xing instantly froze and did not fly out. The strange force of the divine light fist made him stay where he was, and all the force was firmly injected into his body. 2 flying daggers turned into electric lights and shot toward him. TSS, TSS. The 2 flying daggers pierced through his left and right eyes and came out from the back of his head. Chuli caught the falling teacup and gently placed it on the table. Then, he suddenly disappeared. When he reappeared in the next moment, he was already holding Tan Gu in his hand and threw him beside Liang Xing. The 2 daggers pierced through Tan Gu's eyes. He picked up a flying dagger and cut off Liang Xing's head. Then, he wrapped the dagger in a bag and left without a sound. He did not alert the beautiful middle-aged woman who was watering the flowers in the front yard and disappeared from the prophecy pavilion without anyone knowing. He did this to conceal his identity. With Lu Shi as a witness, no one would suspect that it was his Su Hun incarnation. They would only think that it was a top-notch master from the Holy Church of Light. No one from the Holy Church of Light would find out that he was Su Hun, lest they found out that he knew the transformation technique and became suspicious. Chapter 3180. He ran back to the Great Light Peak in one breath. When he arrived outside the Divine Light Basilica, Du Ying was on duty. She was dressed in a green robe and stood there gracefully. When she saw him, her expression changed slightly and her eyes flickered. In the end, she sighed faintly and bowed gracefully before entering the basilica to report. After a while, she returned. "Junior brother Zhao, please come in." Chuli Fist saluted and strode into the basilica. Sun Mingyue was dressed in a snow-white gown. There was no white veil on her face, and her beautiful face was covered with frost. She sat behind the table and said coldly, "What is it now? If it's about the prophecy pavilion, don't say anything." Chuli weighed the box in his hand. "Saint, don't you want to know what's inside? Tell me." Sun Mingyue frowned. Chuli said, "This is the severed head of an elder from the prophecy pavilion." "You killed an elder from the prophecy pavilion?" Sun Mingyue frowned at him. Chuli nodded slowly with a proud expression. "Yes, I snuck into the prophecy pavilion and killed an elder. Saint, you can have a look." He tossed the box lightly. The purple lacquer box with the severed head floated to Sun Mingyue and landed on the table. Sun Mingyue glanced at him and reached out to open the purple lacquer box. A severed head appeared in front of her. The face was lifelike, but it still revealed an expression of unwillingness and anger. The severed head exuded an eerie chill. Chuli had been using his inner energy to freeze the severed head so that Sun Mingyue could have a look and claim credit. He knew that Sun Mingyue had been suppressing him, preventing him from rising up and giving him a chance to gain credit. However, he insisted on doing so and went against her. If he could become a priest and reveal his identity, the Holy Church of Light would become a joke. Sun Mingyue would become a joke too. Her reputation as a magic eye would be ruined. Just thinking about it made him feel better. Chuli said, "This guy is Liang Xing, an elder from the prophecy pavilion. Isn't this a big enough credit?" "What are you trying to say?" Sun Mingyue scoffed, her eyes flashing. "You want to be promoted? I've been a branch leader for quite some time. It's time for me to be promoted." Chuli nodded calmly. Sun Mingyue scoffed. "I'm quite thick-skinned." Chuli said, "Rewards and punishments, merits and demerits. What's there to be embarrassed about? What's mine is mine. If he really is an elder of the Pavilion of Heavenly Mysteries, then killing him is indeed enough merit for you to become a patrol envoy," Sun Mingyue said indifferently. "Fine. You want to become a patrol envoy?" Chuli said, "I want to be a priest." "How ambitious." Sun Mingyue snorted coldly and said, "You want to be a law emperor? Sure, kill the pavilion master of the Heavenly Secrets Pavilion, and the position of law emperor will be yours." Chuli frowned and said, "Saint, that can't be right. Which priest can kill the pavilion leader of the prophecy pavilion? Let alone the pavilion master, our law emperors wouldn't even be able to kill any of the elders. Are you saying that you're stronger than Dharmaraja?" "Of course." Chu Li puffed out his chest without hesitation. I feel that my current cultivation level is stronger than theirs. Of course, martial arts is one aspect, but there's also the contribution you made. You haven't made enough contributions, Sun Mingyue said. She could tell that Chu Li's cultivation level was indeed higher than that of the four great protectors. This was the result of his isolated cultivation, and it was undeniable. Chu Li scoffed and said, Saint, don't try to fool me. The Prophecy Pavilion's strength is comparable to the 8 great sects. Killing one of their elders is enough for you to become a priest. Sun Mingyue shook her head and said, The priests won't agree. Chu Li frowned and said, Do I need their approval? Of course, Sun Mingyue said. You have to convince them in order to fill the position of priest. Chu Li scoffed and shook his head. Saint, you're just trying to make things difficult for me. It's good that you understand, Sun Mingyue said impatiently. Tell me, how did you kill this elder? She was certain that Chu Li would not lie to her. This Liang Xing was probably an elder of the Prophecy Pavilion. She was extremely surprised. Being able to kill an elder of the Prophecy Pavilion, logically speaking, he was qualified to be promoted to a priest. An elder of the Prophecy Pavilion was equivalent to a priest in the Holy Church of Light. Since priest he died in the hands of the Prophecy Pavilion, Zhao Dai had avenged priest he and boosted the morale of the Holy Church of Light. His contribution was outstanding, so he could be promoted to a priest. However, it was not unquestionable, so it could not be mentioned. However, she wanted to suppress Chu Li, so she found an excuse to lower his contribution. Chu Li said, I sneaked into the Prophecy Pavilion and assassinated him. You were able to sneak in? Sun Mingyue frowned and was doubtful. Chu Li said proudly, I killed Ding Ruijie from the Prophecy Pavilion and obtained the secret manual. The saint knows about it too. Yes, the Heavenly Heart technique and the heaven-peering skill. Sun Mingyue nodded. He had presented the secret manual to her back then. Chu Li smiled and said, I secretly cultivated the Heavenly Heart technique and I'm already at the beginner level. Sun Mingyue frowned and glared at him. The Great Light Scripture is enough for you to cultivate. Be careful not to bite off more than you can chew. Chu Li said, After I cultivated the Heavenly Heart technique and entered the Cloud Dream Mountain, the Prophecy Pavilion's formation no longer blocked me. I could sneak in directly, so I secretly killed Liang Xing. I'm really lucky. You secretly went to the Cloud Dream Mountain. Sun Mingyue scoffed. Didn't I ask you to return to Gale Branch? I returned to Gale Branch first before going to the Cloud Dream Mountain. It's not against the saint's order. Chu Li smiled proudly. Sun Mingyue coldly stared at him and said, How dare you sneak into the Prophecy Pavilion alone? Aren't you afraid that they'll find out and kill you? Chu Li said, I heard something. Speak. Sun Mingyue scoffed. Chu Li replied, The Prophecy Pavilion will no longer be able to divine the fate of anyone who has cultivated the Heavenly Heart technique. That's why they won't know that I've infiltrated their territory, nor will they discover me. Saint, I'll be able to become a priest based on this piece of information alone. Shut up. Sun Mingyue waved her hand and frowned. Chu Li reluctantly shut his mouth and looked at her. Sun Mingyue said, Are you saying that we should let everyone cultivate the Heavenly Heart technique? Chu Li nodded. It'll be fine as long as they can cultivate it. The Heavenly Heart technique is the fundamental heart technique of the Prophecy Pavilion, and it has its own unique features. We can give it a try. Sun Mingyue pondered. But it's too late now. Chu Li said, We can give it a try in the future. Sun Mingyue glanced at him and said, Stay at the Great Light Peak for a while. Don't go back. Chu Li was stunned and quickly said, I still need to sneak back into the Prophecy Pavilion. There's no need for that. Sun Mingyue scoffed. They've probably started fighting by now. The Azuras can break their formation. The Azuras had a strange physique. 100 of them were enough to destroy the Prophecy Pavilion. This time, all the Asuras were mobilized not only to destroy the prophecy pavilion but also to establish their authority. They wanted to let the Fu dynasty know that the Holy Church of Light was not a pushover. It was not something that they could bully as they pleased. The Asuras were the seeds of the Outland. Their bodies were connected to the Outland. No matter how powerful the prophecy pavilion was, they would not be able to predict the existence and whereabouts of the Asuras. They could not restrain the Asuras either. The Asuras happened to restrain the prophecy pavilion. It was because she had this confidence that she pressured Chu Li and did not let him make a contribution. Otherwise, even if she wanted to suppress Chu Li, she would not have acted so carelessly at this time. Chu Li frowned. Are the Asuras that powerful? Let's wait and see, Sun Mingyue said. As soon as she finished speaking, Du Ying's voice came from outside. My saint, there's news. Bring it here, Sun Mingyue said. Du Ying walked in gracefully and handed over a bamboo tube. Sun Mingyue took it and opened the wax seal. Then, she took out the rolled-up letter and glanced at it. Her face instantly turned cold and her eyes flashed with anger. She slowly put down the letter. Chapter 3181. He did not want to get into trouble, so he did not say a word and could not wait to leave. However, if he really left, he would run into them and suffer their wrath, so he kept his mouth shut and looked at the pillar beside him as if it was carved with a beautiful flower that was worth studying. Sun Mingyue said, As expected of the prophecy pavilion, I underestimated them. Chu Li secretly sighed in relief and quickly asked, Did the priests not go well? Priest Qing is dead. Sun Mingyue said calmly, but her beautiful eyes were shining. Priest Lu is seriously injured, and the Asuras lost control and fled. Chu Li was shocked. Once the Asuras lost control, it would be a big problem and many innocent people would be killed. He looked at Sun Mingyue with dissatisfaction. How could this happen? Although the prophecy pavilion is strong, it should not be this bad. Sun Mingyue said, The prophecy pavilion set up an ambush, and they were caught off guard. Chu Li clapped his hands and shook his head. The pavilion leader of the prophecy pavilion must have foreseen this disaster and overcome it in advance. As expected of the pavilion leader of the prophecy pavilion, he's amazing. He had always been wary of the pavilion leader of the prophecy pavilion and felt that he was not an ordinary person, but it seemed that he had underestimated him. He had foreseen the Holy Church of Light, and eliminated the most important force of the Asuras in advance, eliminating a big problem. Asuras with a leader were terrifying, but without a leader, the Asuras could not cooperate and could not unite as a force, so their power was too weak. Sun Mingyue glared at him coldly. Chu Li said, Saint, I'll take action. You? Sun Mingyue gave him a sidelong glance. You want to turn the tide? Chu Li shook his head. It's impossible. I'm only a branch leader, and I'm young and inexperienced. I can't convince the others, and no one will listen to me. I want to act alone and kill another elder of the prophecy pavilion to weaken their power. Do you think the elders of the prophecy pavilion are idle, and you can kill them whenever you want? Sun Mingyue scoffed. Chu Li smiled. Haven't I already killed one? Now is a chaotic time, and it's easier to fish in troubled waters. Sun Mingyue stared at him for a moment, pondered for a moment, and slowly nodded. All right, as you wish. Chu Li asked, Saint, if I kill another elder this time, will I be able to become a priest? I can suggest it. As long as they agree, it won't be a problem, Sun Mingyue said in a low voice. She was really annoyed now. The loss this time was too great. 2 of the 4 great protectors were gone, which was a heavy blow to the Holy Church of Light. Although the Holy Church of Light's vitality was not damaged, the loss was indeed heavy, and the key was Asura. For the sake of obtaining these Asuras, she had spent a great deal of effort to turn them into trump cards that possessed boundless power. She never would have thought that they would be destroyed in an instant, With 2 priests gone, the position of priest could not remain empty. Chu Li had killed 2 elders of the Pavilion of Prophecy to avenge the priest, so logically speaking, he was indeed qualified to assume the position of priest. Moreover, his cultivation was extremely high, far surpassing that of the 4 great Karmapa. Chu Li replied excitedly, "All right, I'll make a move immediately. Be careful, don't throw your life away." "Of course." Chu Li closed fist saluted and turned to leave. Duing stood at the side and listened, watching him leave worriedly. Sun Mingwei glanced at Du Ying and shook her head, not saying a word. Chu Li once again appeared in the Pavilion of Prophecy, feeling the atmosphere. Dusk surged and engulfed the Pavilion of Prophecy. The lanterns were first lit, and the light dispelled the twilight. The Pavilion of Prophecy was brightly lit, as if it was daytime. Every place was illuminated by lanterns. It was truly luxurious. However, the atmosphere in the Pavilion of Prophecy was much more tense. He immediately appeared in the Pavilion of Prophecy using Zhao Dai's appearance, then silently came to Lu Shi's courtyard, standing motionless in the shadow of the corner. His force was completely concealed, so no one could detect him. In addition, he had cultivated the Heavenly Heart technique to the 9th level, so there were very few people in the Pavilion of Prophecy who could detect him. Lu Shi was practicing his fist technique in the small courtyard. His eyebrows were all white, and his face was rosy like a baby. This was because he was very good at maintaining his health, and focused on exercising his muscles and bones. Chu Li hid outside his courtyard, thinking of a solution. How could he get rid of him without alerting others? A moment later, he took out a white jade bottle from his bosom and lightly tossed it onto the stone table in the courtyard without making a sound. Lu Shi, who was practicing his fist technique, frowned. He vaguely sensed something strange. He turned his head and glanced at the stone table. He saw the white jade bottle, so he walked forward and stared at it warily. He reached out to pick it up and shook it. He could hear that it was a pill. He looked around strangely, but did not notice Chu Li. He opened the white jade bottle to see what was inside. His intuition did not detect any danger, so it should not be poison. After seeing the pill in the bottle, his eyes widened and his breathing became heavy. He hurriedly poured out a pill and held it in his palm. The snow-white, flawless pill shone with a warm luster under the light, as if it was carved out of white jade. He recognized what pill it was at a glance. It was the soaring pill. He stared at the soaring pill, unable to move his eyes away. Right now, he was lacking a soaring pill. He was just one breath away from advancing a step further. The way Chu Li ate the soaring pill, a few or even a dozen in one go, his resistance to the pill grew stronger. For people like them who took the pill once every 20 years, their resistance to the pill was extremely low. Before the age of 200, one soaring pill was consumed every 10 years. After 200 years, one pill was consumed every 20 years. This was the rule of the Prophecy Pavilion. Even the pavilion leader was not exempted. Therefore, although the elders had complaints, they did not dare to say anything. The elders desired the soaring pill more than the disciples. They could not wait to snatch it, but they dared not act recklessly because of the pavilion leader. Lu Shi's Heavenly Heart technique had not reached the 9th level, but he felt that he was getting closer and closer to it. If he had a soaring pill and comprehended the star chart, he might be able to step into the 9th level in one go and truly obtain freedom. However, the next soaring pill would take 10 years. When he thought about the hope of stepping into the 9th level of the Heavenly Heart technique 10 years later, he became anxious. He thought about it day and night until he became a demon. Therefore, when he saw the soaring pill, his eyes could not help but shine. He instantly fell into a fantasy and lost control of his mind. Swoosh swoosh. Chu Li appeared behind him in a flash and attacked with 2 blades. Lu Shi hurriedly dodged sideways. At the crucial moment, His intuition woke him up and he avoided being hit in the heart. Chu had come into contact with him before. With the support of the manifestation of nature restoration and the heavenly heart technique, his predictions became more accurate. He waved his hands continuously and shot out 4 flying blades in one go. He only managed to dodge 2 of them, but the other 2 that followed hit him. Lu Shi's movements became sluggish. Chu Li's divine light fist arrived. Following that, 2 more flying blades pierced through his head. He could not be more dead. His movements were extremely fast and completed in an instant. It was so fast that Lu Shi could not react in time. Confrontation! Suddenly, a shout rang out. Chu Li's ears exploded. Everything in front of him shook violently. Army! Another shout rang out. Chu Li felt as if he had been struck by lightning. His whole body trembled uncontrollably. Fighting! The shout was like a sudden clap of thunder, shaking his mind until it went blank. The 4 Buddhas and 1 demon chanted desperately. In the blink of an eye, his mind calmed down. However, there was a pain in his chest. A violent force drilled into his body. The scene in front of him suddenly flashed forward. He found himself flying in the air. Chapter 3182. This skinny and short old man was wearing a black robe. It was as if a child was wearing an adult's robe. It was extremely incongruous. Pfft! Chu Li spat out a mouthful of blood in the air. The Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture worked hard to dissolve this violent force. This force was like a giant dragon that was wreaking havoc in his body. The power of the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture could do nothing to it. It could only watch as it destroyed his internal organs. It could not stop its momentum. Chu Li spat out 2 mouthfuls of black blood. There were pieces of flesh in the blood. His internal organs had been shattered. He had suffered a serious injury. Chu Li suddenly swung his arms. The lightning-fast blade light met the skinny old man who had suddenly appeared in front of him. Even in such an unfavorable situation where he was heavily injured and his internal organs were shattered into pieces, the omniscient mirror could still see the skinny old man clearly. He was skinny and short. His eyes were long and narrow, flashing with a strange brilliance. It was different from an ordinary gaze. It was as if he could see through everything and see through everything. Was he a deity? Looking down at all living beings in the world? What was even more strange was that he only had black eyeballs without the sclera. It was as if his entire eye was black and glaring. His face was full of wrinkles. The deep wrinkles looked as if they were carved into his face with knives. He was indescribably old. His body was lifeless like a candle in the wind that could be blown out at any time. He could not determine the identity of this old man. However, he was so powerful that it was most likely the Pavilion Master of the Prophecy Pavilion. If the Pavilion Master of the Prophecy Pavilion was not so powerful, the strength of the Prophecy Pavilion would be too terrifying. The skinny old man ignored the 2 light blades approaching him. He slowly pushed out his skinny left palm. The light blades shot out without any resistance but only hit his shadow. He could switch between his body and his real body. The seemingly slow skinny palm was blocked by Chu Li's hands. The skinny left palm had already passed through his hands and hit his chest. It was incomparably fast and beyond imagination. Pop! The sound was strange, like a pebble falling into a deep well. He felt that the voice came from within his body. His body was like the deep well, and the withered elder's palm force was the pebble. After being hit by this palm, the rampaging dragon became even more tyrannical. His entire body seemed to be bloated by him, expanding and expanding, as if he was about to burst into pieces and scatter in all directions. Buzz! Chu Li formed a seal with his hands and suddenly let out a lion's roar. The sound assassination technique and his tyrannical soul power fused together to form this lion's roar. His thoughts were as fast as lightning. In a flash, He had already thought about it several times. He knew that there was no other way to restrain this skinny old man. His martial arts were no longer of any use, and his speed was too slow. No matter how exquisite he was, it would be useless to hit him. The only thing that could restrain his speed was the sound assassination technique. His shout contained the Buddhist sect's lion's roar and the musical assassination technique. Coupled with his tyrannical soul energy, he was confident that he was stronger than anyone in the Tian Luo sect. The skinny old man stopped moving and looked at him in surprise. Chu Li's body suddenly sped up as if someone had suddenly pulled him back. This was the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture converting a part of the skinny old man's palm force and adding it to his body movement technique, making it twice as fast. The skinny old man took another step forward. Chu Li's vision suddenly blurred, and then he appeared in front of him. It was as if he could travel through space and shrink the ground to inches. The skinny old man's right palm lightly patted him again. He could not resist and willingly fell to this skinny old man's palm. Chu Li took a deep breath and immediately suppressed this strange feeling. He could tell that this skinny old man had the ability to resist, and his soul was abnormally strong. If it was someone else, they would definitely be hit and would just wait for death without resisting. Moo! He formed another hand seal in the air, trying his best to slow down the old man's speed. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to avoid this palm. The skinny old man's movement paused under this lion's roar. Then, his eyes flashed with a strange brilliance, as if he was trying to break free from his shackles. The skinny old man's right palm flashed. Chu Li did not have time to use God's limbs, and the palm force had already landed. Pfft! Chu Li's internal organs were almost crushed. The violent power stacked together and went on a rampage without restraint, crushing every part of his body. It was about to make him explode and turn him into a pile of flesh and blood, just like how Sun Mingyue killed the Prophecy Pavilion disciple with one palm strike. Chu Li tried his best to suppress the palm force, but he gradually lost his strength. He wanted to use God's limbs, but it was too late. The skinny old man's body movement technique was too fast, and he could not use God's limbs to escape. He sighed to himself. Was he really going to die here today? His thoughts were as fast as lightning, but these thoughts only lasted for a moment. The skinny old man's palm was right in front of him again. He could not avoid it, so he could only reach out to meet it. Bang! A beautiful white jade-like palm suddenly appeared and blocked Chu Li's chest, colliding with the skinny old man's palm. The skinny old man immediately took a step back. His eyes flashed with a strange light as he looked at Sun Mingyue, whose white clothes were fluttering in the wind. Chu Li looked at Sun Mingyue in shock. He knew that Sun Mingyue had an ability similar to God's limbs, but he did not expect her to appear at such a crucial moment and save his life. He felt a little complicated. Sun Mingyue owed him a life, and he had been looking for a chance to teach her a lesson. Now that she had saved his life, he did not know what to do. Sun Mingyue tossed him a jade bottle and scoffed. "Hurry up and heal yourself." Chu Li took it and pulled out the stopper. He poured the contents of the jade bottle into his mouth, and the pills melted in his stomach. "Can you hold on?" Sun Mingyue met the skinny old man's palm. Bang! Her white clothes fluttered in the wind, but she did not take a step back. The skinny old man took a step back and looked at her in surprise. The pills turned into a fragrant aroma and entered his stomach. They circulated around his internal organs and quickly healed his injuries. The speed was extremely fast, and they were truly top-notch spirit pills. Chu Li said in a low voice, "I won't die." "That's good." Sun Mingyue scoffed. Chu Li's expression was complicated. He watched as Sun Mingyue and the skinny old man's palm energy collided, and she kept suppressing the old man. He thought that his cultivation level had improved greatly, and he could almost catch up to Sun Mingyue, or even compare to her. Now, it seemed that Sun Mingyue was hiding her strength, and he was still far behind her. This feeling made him very uncomfortable. Could it be that he would never be able to catch up to her? How did she cultivate her cultivation level to this level? Even with the enlightenment technique, she could not reach this level, could she? The skinny old man was like an adult beating up a child in front of Chu-Li, but in front of Sun Mingyue, he paled in comparison. Sun Mingyue calmly received each of his palms, and she was suppressing him in terms of palm energy. Sun Mingyue wore a white veil, and her eyes were as calm as water. Her jade-like hands kept stretching out from her sleeves, and she lightly struck out with her palm energy. The light in the skinny old man's eyes grew brighter, and his body suddenly grew bigger. The loose black robe became well-fitting this time. It was neither too wide nor too narrow, as if it was tailor-made for him. His wrinkled face also smoothed out, and there were no more wrinkles on his face. Suddenly, he looked 100 years younger, and became a middle-aged man. His face was smooth and fair, and he must have been a handsome man when he was young. However, his eyes were still completely black, and there was no white in his eyes. His palms became wide and thick, which was completely different from the skinny old man before. This series of changes happened in the time it took to take a breath, and then he calmly struck out with his palm. Sun Mingyue squinted her eyes, and clenched her palm into a fist. She did not dare to be careless anymore, and struck out with a divine light fist. Bang! Sun Mingyue took a step back, and looked at the middle-aged man in shock. She slowly said, "You're really powerful, Pavilion Leader Su is really extraordinary." Chapter 3183. Su Yongning, the pavilion leader of the Prophecy Pavilion, looked at Sun Mingyue calmly. "Are you the saint of the Holy Church of Light, Sun Mingyue?" "That's me." Sun Mingyue nodded lightly. Her face was covered by a white veil, revealing only her clear and cold eyes. "I've long heard of Pavilion Master Su's great name. Now that I've seen you in person, your reputation is well-deserved. Your pavilion killed 2 of my sect's law kings. Impressive." Her last 2 words of admiration seemed to be squeezed out from the gaps between her teeth. "Same to you." Su Yongning looked at Chu-Li, who was channeling to heal himself, and said calmly, "Sneaking into my pavilion to assassinate an elder is impressive too. I'd like to learn a thing or two from you." Su Yongning's eyes sparkled. His pupils, which were devoid of the sclera, shone like black diamonds. Sun Mingyue scoffed and threw out a divine light fist. Su Yongning struck out with his palm. Boom! It was like a clap of thunder. A strong gust of wind blew, sending sand and pebbles flying. Weeds were uprooted and swept away. Chu-Li's clothes fluttered in the wind. The surging force was like a tidal wave, trying to push him away. He stood firmly and did not retreat. Sun Mingyue and Su Yongning did not retreat at all. Chu-Li narrowed his eyes. Sun Mingyue's strength was truly terrifying. It was as if it was limitless and grew stronger with each opponent. Su Yongning's cultivation level had doubled after using this secret skill, but Sun Mingyue was not at a disadvantage. Bang 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 bang. Amidst the sounds of thunder, the 2 of them kept exchanging blows. Chu-Li's clothes fluttered in the wind. His surroundings had been cleaned up. Not a single blade of grass was left, and even the sand had been removed. It was extremely clean. Su Yongning's deep eyes flickered. An invisible force was emitted, making people want to avoid the fight. They wanted to admit defeat and not fight with him anymore. Sun Mingyue was unmoved and continued to throw out divine light fist. Chu-Li's Mahavairokkana's immobility scripture made him as steady as a rock, but he was curious about the secret skill that Su Yongning was using to have such power. Once this secret technique was used in the right place, it would be extremely powerful. Su Yongning frowned inwardly. He did not expect that the secret skill that he relied on as a miraculous technique would not work. He wanted to change Chu-Li's mind so that he could help him attack Sun Mingyue. Even if he could not defeat Sun Mingyue, he could distract her and give himself an opportunity. He was confident that he could control Chu Li, but he did not expect Chu Li to remain motionless and unaffected. After he struck out with his palm, he suddenly looked up at the sky. A ray of starlight fell from the sky to the top of his head like a thread. The starlight was so faint that it was almost invisible. It was especially hard to notice during the day, but it could not hide from Chu Li's omniscient mirror. When he saw the starlight, Chu Li felt that it was vaguely familiar. Then, he remembered that it was similar to the one he saw in the stargazing pavilion. It was also starlight that fell on top of one's head, constantly channeling energy. Su Yongning's palm was as light as a feather, while Sun Mingyue's divine light fist was still the same. Pop! It was like a pebble falling into a deep well. Su Yongning's black robe fluttered. Sun Mingyue took a step back and frowned. Su Yongning smiled faintly and continued to strike out with his palm. Sun Mingyue countered with her divine light fist. Pop! It was like a pebble falling into a deep well, but this pebble was smaller, and the well was deeper. The sound was especially crisp and deep. Sun Mingyue took another step back. Pop, 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 pop. Su Yongning continuously struck out with his palm. Sun Mingyue still countered with her divine light fist, and kept retreating. Chu Li also took a few steps back. Su Yongning gradually gained the upper hand while Sun Mingyue was at a disadvantage because she did not use her secret skill. However, even if she was at a disadvantage, he could not do anything to her for the time being. Chu Li was bored as he watched. Their techniques were not exquisite at all. They were relying on their internal energy to fight and suppress each other. Su Yongning was suppressing Sun Mingyue. Sun Mingyue kept retreating until she unknowingly retreated to a wall. Chu Li suddenly shouted, "Saint, be careful." He saw a thick beam of starlight fall from above Su Yongning's head. It was colorless and soundless as it blended with the void. However, it was overbearing and its murderous intent was like an invisible sword. The starlight pierced the top of Su Yongning's head. His eyes flashed and his palm energy suddenly became light. It was like a lover's caress. There was no longer any murderous intent. Chu Li felt that something was wrong and quickly reminded her. When Sun Mingyue heard him, her graceful body swayed and she easily dodged the palm. Boom! The palm energy shot out and hit the wall behind Sun Mingyue. It was like a galloping horse had crashed into it. The wall let out a loud sound and trembled slightly. A hole appeared in the wall. The palm print had penetrated the wall. Sun Mingyue frowned and looked at Su Yongning. A snow-white brilliance flashed across the sky and fell on Sun Mingyue's body like a waterfall. Her entire body flashed with a warm brilliance, and her body seemed to have turned into a white jade statue under the light. Chu Li shook his head. This secret skill of hers was not the secret of great light that burned her blood essence. It was just an ordinary secret skill. Sun Mingyue was too careless. Then, he thought, why didn't she use the secret of great light directly? Instead, she used this harmless secret skill. It seems like she doesn't have enough murderous intent. Bang! The palm energy and the fist energy collided with each other a meter away. There was a loud bang, and it felt like a thunderbolt had landed between the two of them. A round pit appeared on the ground. Chu Li could not help but take a step back. The surging force forced him to retreat. Bang, 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 bang. Sun Mingyue took a step forward and threw a punch. With every step she took, she threw a punch. Step by step, she forced Su Yongning to retreat. Soon, he left the bottom of the wall and arrived at the bluestone path. The fresh flowers around the bluestone path were torn apart by the tyrannical force. They were torn to shreds, swept far away, and scattered in all directions. Chu Li's initial heavy injuries were reduced to minor ones. His body was strong. Coupled with the miraculous effect of the spirit pill given by Sun Mingyue and the help of the life and death scripture, his internal organs had mostly recovered. The inner energy of the great light scripture flowed continuously. Suddenly, his expression changed. He stood in front of Sun Mingyue and faced the palm that suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Bang! He flew backward and spat out a mouthful of blood in the air. Sun Mingyue twisted her body and avoided Su Yongning's palm that suddenly sped up. She appeared in the air and supported Chu Li with both hands. Chu Li's face was pale and his breathing was weak. He looked at Sun Mingyue with a bitter smile. He did not think that he would sacrifice himself to save Sun Mingyue. No matter how fast his brain was, it could not be faster than his body's instinctive reaction. His body blocked the palm before his brain, completely disregarding his own safety. He smiled bitterly and thought about why he did that. Could it be to repay Sun Mingyue for saving his life? Sun Mingyue gently put him on the ground and looked up at the young man standing beside Su Yongning. Her eyes flashed with a cold light. This time, it was Zhao Dai who had saved her. If he had not blocked the palm, she would not have been able to avoid this silent palm that appeared out of nowhere. This palm was sudden and mysterious. It was impossible to guard against it. She was in the middle of making her move, so there was no way she could have avoided it. She looked at Chu Li's pale face with mixed feelings. His injuries had worsened. This time, his life was in danger. Chapter 3184. He stared at the blue-shirt young man who appeared out of nowhere and sighed. Saint, be careful of this guy. He was tall and had an average appearance. He would not stand out in a crowd. However, this palm strike came at the right time as Sun Mingyue's old and new forces were connected. He coordinated with Su Yongning very well. He stood beside Su Yongning and calmly sized up Chu Li and Sun Mingyue. Sun Mingyue slowly put Chu Li down and said, "Don't worry." Her eyes glowed like a clear spring as her white robe fluttered. She disappeared in a flash and appeared behind them in the next moment. Bam bam! Sun Mingyue took a step back with two muffled sounds. Su Yongning's black robe shook violently as if he was standing in a strong wind. The young man's blue robe was also fluttering as he took a step back with a serious expression. His cultivation level was not as high as Su Yongning's. Sun Mingyue did not even use the secret technique of great light to barely tie with him. "What a saint!" the blue-shirt young man said. Sun Mingyue scoffed. "Who are you?" Chu Li replied, "A disciple of Stargazing Pavilion?" The blue-robed youth's palm energy was like a knife, a real knife that was stirring up his internal organs, wanting to grind them to pieces. The Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture was difficult to convert and the palm force was extremely pure. The Heaven Will technique automatically activated and melted the palm force in the blink of an eye. Both came from the same source, so it was easy to assimilate. He saw the starlight from the sky shrouding the blue-shirt young man. Based on the young man's clothes, he was undoubtedly a disciple of Stargazing Pavilion. His heart was heavy. Although Prophecy Pavilion and Stargazing Pavilion had a deep relationship and attacking Prophecy Pavilion would inevitably affect Stargazing Pavilion, he did not expect a disciple of Stargazing Pavilion to appear so early and attack without hesitation. The blue-shirt young man turned to glance at Chu Li and smiled. "I'm Yang Xingyuan from Stargazing Pavilion." "Stargazing Pavilion wants to intervene?" Chu Li scoffed. His 5 viscera and 6 bowels were recovering rapidly. Yang Xingyuan said slowly, "Stargazing Pavilion will not sit back and watch Prophecy Pavilion be attacked. The Holy Church of Light has stretched their hands too far. It's best to stop." "Can you speak for Stargazing Pavilion?" Chu Li scoffed. Yang Xingyuan said, "I'm here under orders." Chu Li frowned. "What if we don't stop?" Yang Xingyuan smiled. "My senior brothers are almost at the Great Light Peak now. I wonder if the Great Light Peak's formation can stop them. The Great Light Peak is filled with martial arts masters. Why would we be afraid of the Stargazing Pavilion?" Chu Li sneered. He glanced at Sun Mingyue. Sun Mingyue seemed to be deep in thought. She seemed to be daydreaming. Yang Xingyuan said faintly, The Holy Church of Light isn't afraid of Stargazing Pavilion, but what about the other 7 sects? If the Holy Church of Light dares to act rashly in the Fu dynasty, the 8 major sects will definitely not stand idly by. We'll unite against them. 8 major sects? Don't try to bluff, Chu Li said coldly. Yang Xingyuan said, just take it as me scaring you. Don't regret it. Forget it, this matter ends here. Sun Mingyue suddenly said. Chu Li asked, the saint? He pretended to be surprised, but he had expected Sun Mingyue to do so. He had already seen some clues from the previous fight. Sun Mingyue turned to look at Yang Xingyuan. The Prophecy Pavilion has gone too far. They trespassed into the Great Light Peak and killed the Holy Church of Light's priest. That's why they attacked the Prophecy Pavilion. Since the 8 major sects are here, the Holy Church of Light will do them a favor. Yang Xingyuan shook his head. Thank you, Saint, but the Holy Church of Light is the one taking advantage. It doesn't matter if we're at a disadvantage or taking advantage. The Prophecy Pavilion is powerful, and we may have taken advantage of them by sneaking an attack on them. However, if we want to end this matter, we must make an agreement. The disciples of the Prophecy Pavilion are never allowed to step into the Great Light Peak. If we break this agreement, the 8 major sects will not interfere with our revenge. Sun Mingyue turned to look at Su Yongning and said, Pavilion Leader Su, I can swear that the disciples of the Holy Church of Light will not provoke the Prophecy Pavilion. Su Yongning's eyes flickered, but he remained silent. Sun Mingyue said, If Pavilion Leader Su is unwilling, the Holy Church of Light will accompany you to the end. Su Yongning's eyes flickered as he looked at Chu Li. He said calmly, The only person who can sneak into the Prophecy Pavilion to assassinate us is this person. I'll make an oath after I kill him. He must eliminate anyone who could sneak into the Prophecy Pavilion to assassinate them. Otherwise, the Prophecy Pavilion would not have peace. Chu Li smiled. Sun Mingyue stated this condition to give the disciples of the Holy Church of Light an explanation. It was obvious that she did not want to be enemies with the 8 major sects. She must have been extremely angry and humiliated by such a clean show of weakness. She was such a proud person. However, the disciples of the Holy Church of Light knew that the 8 Fu sects were powerful. It was difficult for them to adapt to circumstances like her. If they retreated like this, they would probably be dissatisfied with Sun Mingyue. They must force the pavilion leader of the Prophecy Pavilion to make an oath in order to give everyone an explanation. Sun Mingyue said, To be honest, Pavilion Leader Su, the Holy Church of Light has obtained the Heavenly Heart technique from your pavilion. Su Yongning's expression changed slightly. Sun Mingyue said, It's not easy to learn the Heavenly Heart technique, but it's not that difficult. If I was determined to take revenge, there would not be many disciples left in the Prophecy Pavilion. I hope Pavilion Leader Su can think this through. Su Yongning's eyes flashed. Sun Mingyue was implying that this person in front of him was not the only one who could enter the Prophecy Pavilion. After a while, he calmed himself down and said slowly, It's not difficult to learn the Heavenly Heart technique, but it's not easy either. There are no more than 10 disciples in the Holy Church of Light who can learn it. I'm confident about this. 10. Sun Mingyue smiled faintly and said, Pavilion Leader Su, are you not going to make the oath? Su Yongning pondered for a moment and said slowly, Fine, I can promise that the disciples of the Prophecy Pavilion will never step into the Great Light Peak again. Sun Mingyue nodded. All right, I also promise that if the disciples of the Prophecy Pavilion don't pick a fight, the disciples of the Holy Church of Light will never step into the Prophecy Pavilion again. Clap, clap. Yang Xingyuan applauded softly and praised, A wise man submits to circumstances. I admire the saint's breadth of mind and magnanimity. I'll take my leave first and ask the saint to withdraw the disciples of the Holy Church of Light. However, the saint has committed a grave sin this time. I'm afraid the 8 major sects will pursue this matter. Azura? Sun Mingyue frowned. Yang Xingyuan nodded. The Azuras are now wreaking havoc in the Fu dynasty and killing the innocent. This debt will be placed on the saint. Sun Mingyue said calmly, they won't be triggered within 10 days. It's only been 3 days now unless someone provokes them. Oh? Yang Xingyuan was surprised. Sun Mingyue looked at him with a faint smile. I've used the Great Light scripture to suppress the Azura's ferocity for 10 days. Without the stimulation of blood, they won't be triggered. It's not too late to call them back now. To be able to suppress the Azura's ferocity, it's a great deed. Yang Xingyuan nodded slowly. Chapter 3185. Sun Mingyue took a step to Chu Li's side, bringing with her a faint fragrance. Chu Li said, I heard that Stargazing Pavilion's stargazing technique is the best, able to see fortune and misfortune. It seems like the rumors are true, being able to see the calamity of Prophecy Pavilion. You flatter me. Yang Xingyuan smiled. Chu Li shook his head. I don't know if Stargazing Pavilion can see if Pavilion Leader Su will keep his promise. Pavilion Leader Su has always been a man of his word, Yang Xingyuan said. Chu Li said, if there's a day when I break my promise, we'll have to go to Stargazing Pavilion first. Yang Xingyuan slowly said, all right. Chu Li nodded in satisfaction. Sun Mingyue's jade-like hands supported his back as she infused her inner energy into his body. It was like a clear spring that cleansed his internal organs and helped him recover from his injuries. In the blink of an eye, the two left Prophecy Pavilion, moving faster and faster. The scenery in front of them gradually became blurred, as if the scene was distorted and moving backward. Sun Mingyue had already used her divine power. Chu Li was silent, knowing that she was unhappy. Anyone would feel aggrieved. Enduring this was a test of one's willpower. Sun Mingyue was favored by the heavens, with such a high cultivation level, yet she could endure it. She was not inferior to men. The Holy Church of Light was no match for the 8 major sects. If it was him, he would have no choice but to do the same thing as Sun Mingyue. He already knew that Sun Mingyue did not plan to fight Prophecy Pavilion, or else she would have killed Su Yongning with the secret technique of Great Light. She did not do it because she was worried and did not want to fight recklessly. If she killed Su Yongning, the 8 major sects would join forces to suppress her. The 8 major sects were probably looking for such an opportunity. The rise of the Holy Church of Light was not what they wanted. Chu Li's eyes suddenly brightened, the scenery in front of him became clear again. They were standing in a jujube forest. The omniscient mirror saw more than 10 people gathered in the depths of the forest. Lu Chenyu was sitting cross-legged in the middle. His eyebrows were white and his face was covered with a layer of gold powder. 12 top-notch grandmasters were sitting cross-legged around him. Their faces were gloomy. The air around them seemed to solidify. Sun Mingyue appeared with Chu Li. Lu Chenyu's complexion was golden and his aura was weak. He was trying his best to heal himself. The 12 top experts stared at him without blinking. When Sun Mingyue appeared, Lu Chenyu opened his eyes. His gaze was dull. Everyone turned their heads and stood up to greet him. Sun Mingyue stepped in front of Lu Chenyu and pressed on his shoulder. Lu Chenyu was unable to get up. He raised his head and cupped his fists with a bitter smile. Saint, I am ashamed. I have suffered heavy casualties and even lost Azura. Now that things have come to this, there's no point in saying anything more, Sun Mingyue said faintly. You guys can go back first. She was indeed dissatisfied with Lu Chenyu. Lu Chenyu was also an elder of the cult. He should have been more cautious in his actions. He had not been discreet in his actions and caused Qing Siyu's death. Then what about the war with the Pavilion of Heavenly Secrets? Lu Chenyu frowned. We can't just go back with our tails between our legs, right? It's over. Sun Mingyue said, I've exchanged blows with the Pavilion Master of the Pavilion of Heavenly Secrets. The Stargazing Pavilion has stepped in to mediate, so we can only retreat and look for another opportunity. Lu Qinyu's face darkened. Stargazing pavilion. He knew the result the moment he heard about the stargazing pavilion. Once the stargazing pavilion attacked, the Holy Church of Light would have no choice but to retreat. Sun Mingwe said, "There's no use acting on impulse. Go back with the others as soon as possible. Be careful not to get ambushed. I'll go gather the Azuras." "Yes." Lu Qinyu nodded bitterly. If he had not been ambushed, or if he could have won the ambush, the current situation would be very different. Even if he retreated, he would have received sufficient compensation. He would not have lost so many soldiers and was in such a sorry state. At the end of the day, he was the one who had not been prudent and meticulous in his actions. Sun Mingwe said, "The most important thing for you now is to heal your injuries and return. If the Fu 8 sects secretly attack you, you'll be in grave danger. Move now, hide your identity and leave quietly." "Yes." Lu Qinyu nodded. He took out a jade flute and sighed as he handed it to Sun Mingwe. Sun Mingwe took it and kept it in her sleeve. "I'll help you heal your injuries. Recover as soon as possible." Lu Qinyu gave a fist salute. "Thank you, Saint." Sun Mingwe waved her hand and said, "Zhao Daif, come here too." Chu Li said, "Saint, I'm almost recovered." Sun Mingwe stared at him. Chu Li had no choice but to sit cross-legged next to Lu Qinyu. The two sat side by side. Sun Mingwe placed her palms on their backs and injected inner energy like a cold spring into their bodies, rapidly healing their injuries. Chu Li recovered quickly. The effects of the spirit medicine he had consumed earlier were still present. Moreover, his body was extraordinarily strong. Sun Mingwe could clearly feel that he was recovering quickly. She secretly exclaimed that he was indeed a genius with an extraordinary gift. His body's recovery ability was a few times or even 10 times that of a normal person. It was far from what Lu Qinyu could compare to. Lu Qinyu's injuries were much lighter than his. However, his recovery was much slower. Zhao Dai had almost recovered from his severe injuries, but Lu Qinyu's injuries were still extremely serious. 2 hours later, Sun Mingwe withdrew her palms. Lu Qinyu's complexion looked much better. The golden color on his face had dissipated, leaving behind only a pale complexion. Chu Li's complexion even reddened a little. Sun Mingwe stood up and said, "Let's go." Lu Qinyu and the others fist saluted and bade farewell. Then, they dispersed and disappeared into the boundless jujube forest. "Zhao Daif, you should go back too," Sun Mingwe said. Chu Li hurriedly asked, "Saint, are you looking for Azura?" Sun Mingwe nodded. "If we don't find them, many people will die if they go berserk. It's against the natural order." Chu Li said, "Let me help. I can sense where they are, but you can't." Sun Mingwe shook her head. "You'll be a burden if you follow them." Chu Li said, "There are more than 100 of them. If we gather them together, someone will have to look after them, right? Otherwise, if they run while we search, how long will it take?" "That makes sense," Sun Mingwe said. "Help me look after Azura then." She now trusted Chu Li very much. He had sacrificed himself to save her life at a critical moment. Her attitude toward Chu Li had changed. She felt that even if he had a bad temper, he could still be very useful if he was loyal. Previously, she could not see through Chu Li's mind, so she had always had doubts. Now, her doubts were dispelled. The two of them disappeared from where they were and appeared outside a village. They saw a thin middle-aged man in a small forest. He looked like an ordinary person who did not know any martial arts, but when he saw Sun Mingwe, he turned into a stream of light and shot out. Sun Mingwe took out a jade flute from her sleeve and gently waved it. Instantly, a clear whistle was heard. The thin middle-aged man who was running away suddenly stopped and glided back to them. He fist saluted. "Greetings, Saint." Sun Mingwe said, "Follow me back." "Yes." The thin middle-aged man nodded helplessly. When he glanced at Chu Li, a murderous glint flashed across his eyes. Chu Li smiled. Saint, can this jade flute control them? This jade flute is enough, Sun Mingwe said. Chu Li said, if someone else gets their hands on this jade flute, won't they be able to control them? Chapter 3186. She placed one hand on the back of Chu Li's hand and the other on the thin man's sleeve. Then, they disappeared and reappeared in a pine forest. Chu Li looked around. Where is this place? Within the Li dynasty, Sun Mingwe answered. Chu Li praised. Saint, your light body technique is amazing. Don't be envious. You won't be able to learn it, Sun Mingwe said. Watch him here. I'll go catch the others. Yes. Chu Li nodded. Sun Mingwe suddenly stopped when she was about to leave. She frowned at the thin man. The thin man was staring at Chu Li with an eager expression. It was obvious that he was going to fight Chu Li once she left. Zhao Dai could deal with one Azura, or even two. However, he would not be able to deal with 100 of them. Fine, take this. Sun Mingwe tossed the jade flute in her sleeve to Chu Li. Chu Li took it. I'll take this. What will you do, Saint? I have my ways. Sun Mingwe waved her hand. The jade flute is a convenient method. Watch him well and don't let him escape. Yes. Chu Li nodded. Sun Mingwe suddenly disappeared. The thin man glanced at the jade flute in Chu Li's hand and scoffed. Who are you? Chu Li smiled faintly. It's my first time hearing that an Azura can be tamed. I'm embarrassed for you. What do you mean? The thin man's face turned pale. This was the last thing they wanted to talk about, but Chu Li had unceremoniously exposed it. He flew into a rage and was filled with killing intent. He wanted nothing more than to tear Chu Li apart. His eyes suddenly became long and narrow. His pupils lengthened vertically, forming a cross with his long eyelids. His gaze was cold and emotionless. He looked at Chu Li as if he was a dead man. Chu Li grinned. Are you trying to kill me? You deserve to die. The thin man gritted his teeth and said coldly. Chu Li fiddled with the jade flute. I wonder if this will work. Then, he waved the flute gently without waiting for the thin man to react. Woo! The jade flute let out a clear and melodious sound that traveled far. It was different from the sharp and short sound of a normal jade flute. The skinny middle-aged man's eyes returned to normal in an instant. His gaze was warm, no different from a normal person's. He glared at Chu Li. He was furious, but he could not muster any killing intent. As soon as the jade flute sounded, he could not feel any killing intent towards the flute-bearer. Chu Li smiled at him. It seems to be very effective. I wonder how the saint managed to tame you guys? Enlighten us with the Dharma of Buddhism. The thin middle-aged man said coldly. The Holy Lady's Dharma is profound. We can only convert to her. Chu Li was surprised. The saint's dharmic base isn't that profound, is it? The Great Light Scripture can restrain our Azura power technique. The thin middle-aged man scoffed and said, It's useless even if you know. It's impossible for her to cultivate the Great Light Scripture to the level of a saint. It's impossible for her to purify us. Great Light Scripture, Chu Li muttered. He glanced at the thin middle-aged man and knew that he was up to no good. He was trying to sow discord between him and Sun Mingwe. Fighting had already become an Azura's instinct, and it was present everywhere. Even if they had already converted to Sun Mingwe, they were still constantly thinking about fighting and finding others to fight against Sun Mingwe. He frowned and stared at the thin middle-aged man. You're not trying to trick me, are you? Azuras were very cunning. It was difficult to tell which was the truth. A white shadow flashed and Sun Mingwe appeared again. She was holding onto another thin middle-aged man. He looked different from the previous one. His body was thin and strong like a leopard. Chu Li smiled and said, Saint, this guy said that the saint used the Great Light Scripture to purify them and convert them. Sun Mingwe glanced at the thin middle-aged man and said, Yes, it was the Great Light Scripture. Chu Li asked, "Can I purify them too?" "Yes." Sun Mingyue nodded. "As long as your great light scripture is more profound than mine." Chu Li smiled bitterly. Sun Mingyue scoffed and said, "Don't let your imagination run wild. Keep an eye on them." "Yes." Chu Li nodded. When Sun Mingyue disappeared again, he waved the jade flute to prevent the thin middle-aged man from throwing a tantrum. Then, he lowered his head and pondered. This trip to the prophecy pavilion had disappointed him. He did not obtain any star stones. He had put in so much effort to obtain the star stones, but unfortunately, he did not get what he wanted. Su Yongning was not seriously injured, so he could not see through his mind. It was almost impossible to find the star stones. Moreover, Su Yongning's cultivation level was beyond his imagination. It was impossible to force it. There was still a long way to go before he could obtain the star stones. However, it was not as if he had gained nothing. His guess was right. The cultivators of the Heavenly Killer technique would improve their Heavenly Heart technique. His Heavenly Heart technique had improved, and the life and death scripture had become more agile. He could see Su Yongning through a tree. This tree was a distance away from the basilica where Su Yongning was. He could clearly see the people entering and exiting the basilica from a dozen meters away. Su Yongning had not come out since he entered the basilica. He was seriously injured. There were 22 elders entering and exiting the basilica. All of them had profound cultivation levels, similar to Lu Qinyu's. The prophecy pavilion was indeed powerful. What surprised him was not that the life and death scripture could condense his spiritual energy on a tree to replace his eyes. More importantly, he was in the Li dynasty. The tree that condensed his spiritual energy was in the prophecy pavilion. The Li dynasty and the Fu dynasty were separated by more than 10,000 miles. When he thought about it this way, he understood how mysterious the life and death scripture was. He had been cultivating martial arts diligently for the past 2 years. Other than improving his soul, he could not improve the life and death scripture at other times. He was surprised that the Heavenly Heart technique was on the right track. Sun Mingyue appeared in a flash. She grabbed an azura in each hand and disappeared again. Chu Li waved the jade flute to calm the two newcomers down. He used the omniscient mirror to look around. He was at the foot of a towering mountain. After passing through the dense forest, he could see the towering mountain. These azuras should be placed in this mountain. He reached out his hand to call the first azura. "You guys are cultivating here?" "Yes." The thin middle-aged man nodded. "It's on the mountain next to us. It's a sacred place for us to cultivate." Chu Li frowned. "Isn't the sacred place the Ji dynasty's Moonfall Peak? That place is not bad. This place is not bad either." The thin middle-aged man nodded. "But that place is occupied by the bald donkeys from the Tempest Temple. I can't cultivate in peace. No one knows about this place." Chu Li nodded slowly. "Where's the bishop of the Divine Church of Azura?" "The bishop hasn't returned yet." The thin middle-aged man looked around. Chu Li asked, "Do you guys listen to the bishop?" "First the saint. When the saint isn't here, we listen to the bishop." "Then why did you guys run away?" "Well..." The thin middle-aged man hesitated for a moment before he smiled. "The bishop asked us to try and escape. He wanted to see if the saint could catch us. If she can't, we'll be able to roam the world freely." "Once you roam the world freely, you won't be far from destruction." Chu Li scoffed. "Do you think the Fu dynasty is a vegetarian?" "Humph." The thin middle-aged man scoffed and said no more. Sun Mingyue appeared again and grabbed an azura in each hand. She looked at Chu Li with her bright eyes. "I want to return to the Great Light Peak immediately." Chapter 3187. Chu Li quickly asked, "Did the Stargazing Pavilion disciples really go to the Great Light Peak?" "Yes," Sun Mingyue replied. Chu Li asked, "If the saint returns, what about the remaining azuras?" I'll come back in a few days to catch them, Sun Mingyue replied. Chu Li said, since they're back, there's no problem. I'll go back and see if there's anything I can help with. Sun Mingyue frowned at him and slowly nodded. All right. Chu Li's cultivation level was unclear now. If the murderer was not from the Holy Church of Light, the stargazing pavilion would only think that they were the murderers. Chu Li's face darkened as his thoughts raced. He disappeared in a flash and appeared in another house the next moment. He did not step into the house. He observed with the omniscient mirror and pondered at the same time. Logically, this should not have happened. The stargazing pavilion disciples had the stargazing technique and were better at seeking fortune and avoiding danger than the prophecy pavilion. It was difficult for anyone to kill them. Moreover, if they predicted that he was in danger, they would not appear and would immediately avoid him. The current situation was obviously out of their calculations. As for those who could break through their prying, it was either him who possessed the 9 levels of heavenly heart technique, or Sun Mingyue who possessed an all-powerful qi dynamic. Only such people could kill them. After all, it was not easy to kill the injured disciples of the stargazing pavilion. No matter how he thought about it, there were only a few people in the Li dynasty. Could it be that the bishop of the Holy Church of Light had personally done this, or could it be the sect leaders of the other 3 sects? His heart skipped a beat. The White Tiger sect had long been dissatisfied with the Holy Church of Light's dominance. It was a good opportunity for the stargazing pavilion to weaken the Holy Church of Light. The injuries of the 4 stargazing pavilion disciples were a little strange. It was a pure external impact without any signs of internal energy invasion. The murderer must be someone with extraordinary strength. Chu Li could not tell which heart technique was used. Chu Li pondered for a moment but did not go in. He fluttered away. 4 hours later, he returned to the Divine Light Basilica of the Great Light Peak and reported the situation to Sun Mingyue. Sun Mingyue sat behind the table. She had already taken off her white veil and revealed her beautiful face. Her jade face was covered with a layer of frost. She stood up and paced in front of the table with her hands behind her back. The basilica was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Chu Li did not move and Du Ying stared at Sun Mingyue without blinking. Chu Li could tell that she was also hesitant. Once this matter was exposed, it would be a disaster. He cleared his throat to break the silence and said, Saintess, the stargazing pavilion should have received the news of their disciples' death by now. They can also speculate the location, so they should be arriving at the city of Wu soon. Sun Mingyue frowned at him and nodded slowly. Yes. Chu Li said, this battle is inevitable. Saint, don't take any chances. Not necessarily. Sun Mingyue shook her head and said, the stargazing pavilion has great foresight. They might be able to find out who the murderer is. Chu Li shook his head. Even if they find out who the culprit is, we're still accomplices. If they can't find the culprit, they'll definitely vent their anger on us. Once we start a war with the stargazing pavilion. Sun Mingyue glanced at Du Ying. You can leave first. Yes. Du Ying curtsied and took a deep look at Chu Li before leaving. Sun Mingyue paced with her hands behind her back. After a while, she sighed softly. Once we start a war with the stargazing pavilion, the Holy Church will be in danger. Chu Li said, could it be the work of the other 3 sect leaders? Sun Mingyue said, there's no evidence. I hope that the stargazing pavilion can divine it. Unless it's absolutely necessary, we can't start a war with the stargazing pavilion. The stargazing pavilion isn't the prophecy pavilion. Chapter 3188. The Fu dynasty's 8 major sects fought fiercely against each other, even more so than the Holy Church of Light and the White Tiger sect. The Holy Church of Light was the dominant force while the White Tiger sect could only stir up some trouble. The Fu dynasty's 8 major sects were Goddess Attraction Mountain, which was detached from worldly affairs, while the other 7 sects fought fiercely. Stargazing Pavilion had great foresight. Although they had few disciples, they were quite powerful. However, they were not popular. The other 6 sects were hostile towards them, so they would not mind giving them a hand if they had the chance to see them suffer. Sun Mingyue shook her head. We can't count on them. No matter how much they fight, they'll be united against the outsiders when it comes to sects other than the Fu dynasty. That's why the Fu dynasty's status in the martial arts world is unshakable. This was why the Fu dynasty's martial arts world was so terrifying. Apart from the Fu dynasty, the other countries' martial arts world did not have such awareness, so they could never turn the tables. Chu Li said, Saint, now that things have come to this, we have no choice but to fight. Stargazing Pavilion won't let this go. We can't just sit back and do nothing, can we? He was conflicted with Sun Mingyue. They both hoped that the Holy Church of Light would be destroyed, but at the same time, they did not. The Holy Church of Light was both an obstacle and the biggest shield. Sigh. Sun Mingyue showed a rare hint of weakness and shook her head. Will the Holy Church be destroyed because of me? Am I really not on good terms with the Holy Church? She recalled the rumors spread by the Prophecy Pavilion and could not help but feel sad. Chu Li smiled. Don't worry, Saint. The Holy Church won't fall so easily. I'll go to Stargazing Pavilion to see if I can sneak in. Forget it. Sun Mingyue shook her head. Why don't I send their corpses back to Stargazing Pavilion? Chu Li asked, to show my sincerity. You're courting death. Sun Mingyue rolled her eyes at him. Stargazing Pavilion was used to being unreasonable and overbearing. The Fu dynasty's martial arts world was like this as they regarded themselves as the Celestial Empire. To them, the Ji dynasty, Li dynasty, Qiu dynasty, and Zheng dynasty were barbarians who did not treat them as humans. If Chu Li dared to send the corpses back to Stargazing Pavilion, they might kill him to vent their anger. My saint, let's pretend that we don't know anything. Chu Li scoffed. Let's pretend that we haven't returned. Let's gather the Azuras first. All right. Sun Mingyue nodded slowly. She put on the white veil and then tugged at Chu Li's sleeve before vanishing abruptly. The next moment, she reappeared at the same spot where more than 10 Azuras were sitting cross-legged and cultivating. When the Azuras saw them, they merely glanced at them before continuing with their cultivation. Sun Mingyue said, Look after them, I'll go look for them. Chu Li nodded. Sun Mingyue flashed again and again, bringing back 2 people every time. In one breath, she gathered all 100 people together. From time to time, Chu Li would wave his jade flute to dispel their murderous intent. After Sun Mingyue let go of the last person, her bright eyes flickered like the rippling waters of a clear lake. Chu Li noticed that something was amiss and looked at her suspiciously. Sun Mingyue frowned and shook her head. Send them into the mountains first. Chu Li asked, What happened? One is missing, Sun Mingyue said. Chu Li asked, Could it be the bishop of the Divine Church of Azura? Sun Mingyue nodded slowly and then sneered. What a good plan! Chu Li did not need to think too much to know that the bishop of the Divine Church of Azura had concealed himself from Sun Mingyue and then seized the opportunity to escape, successfully breaking free from Sun Mingyue's control and senses. Can you catch up to him? Chu Li asked. Sun Mingyue said, If he really escapes, it'll be a sin. The bishop of the Divine Church of Azura had outstanding martial arts and was even more bloodthirsty. If he escaped, there was no telling how many people he would kill, and she would be responsible for it. Chu Li said, I'll make arrangements for them. This mountain is their cultivation sanctuary. Once they enter, they won't want to leave. This is the mountain's formation talisman. Send them in. Sun Mingyue took out a jade pendant and handed it to Chu Li. Be careful. Chu Li took the white jade pendant. Don't worry, Saint. Sun Mingyue suddenly disappeared. Chu Li waved the jade flute and raised his voice. Everyone, follow me. It's time to go home. The 100 Azuras stood up and stared at him with their piercing eyes. It was frightening, They were thin and of medium height. When they stood together, there was a murderous aura in their movements. It was like an army that made people shudder. Chu smiled. He was not worried. He turned and walked into the depths of the forest. After passing through the forest, he entered the mountain peak. Swoosh! Swoosh! 2 soft whistles were heard. Chu moved sideways to avoid them. 2 thin middle-aged men pounced on him. They spread their fingers and their long nails gleamed coldly like cold blades. The 2 men watched as he dodged and continued to attack. Bam bam bam! Chu punched each of them. The 2 men were sent flying and crashed into the rest of the Asuras. Bam 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 bam! Wherever they passed, those who were hit would be sent flying. It seemed like the 2 of them were the ones who sent everyone flying. In the blink of an eye, more than 30 people were sent flying. They only stopped when they crashed into 2 pine trees. The pine needles rustled and fell on them. What? The 2 men spat out blood. They became limp and could not move. Even though they had the body of Asura, they could not withstand Chu Li's inner force. The Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture constantly changed the inner force from Yin to Yang, then from Yang to Yin. The cycle was endless and endless, destroying their internal organs. Their cultivation level was far lower than Chu Li's. They could not fight back against Chu Li's inner force. The body of Asura and the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture's inner force were fighting. One was destroying while the other was repairing. The repair could not keep up with the speed of destruction. Their injuries kept worsening. In just a short while they had lost all their energy. Humph! Another 2 Asuras snorted and pounced on him. Chu did not wait for them to get close. He threw 2 divine light fists. Bam bam! The 2 Asuras were sent flying and crashed into 2 trees. They hung there motionlessly as if they were embedded in the trees. Only the veins on their necks were bulging. It was obvious that they were using all their strength. Chu shook his head and looked at the rest of the Asuras. They looked fierce and murderous. It was obvious that they wanted to pounce on him together. Chu smiled faintly. Looks like your murderous nature is still there. He waved the jade flute a few times as he spoke. The rest of the Asuras slowly surrounded him. Their eyes became long and narrow, and there was no longer any emotion in their eyes. Their gazes were cold and eerie, and they looked at him as if they were looking at a dead man. Those who were timid would be so frightened by their looks that their limbs would turn to jelly. Chu frowned as he looked at the jade flute. It seemed that there was something wrong with the jade flute. It might have been switched. This could be the work of the bishop of the Divine Church of Asura. Lu Chenyu did not realize it because he was heavily injured. This bishop was indeed a powerful person. The Asuras sneered and approached him. They approached him step by step, creating a huge pressure. Chu squinted his eyes and looked at them. You want to kill me and lure the saint back, right? Smart people don't live long. A hoarse voice came from the crowd. Chu gaze fell on a thin elder. Looks like you're half a leader. Since when did the Asuras become so obedient? How strange. Chapter 3189. Where did your bishop escape to? Escape? The thin elder curled his lips and looked at him in disdain. The bishop is unpredictable. You'll know how powerful he is in the future. Chu frowned and his face darkened. His omniscient mirror had improved tremendously and he could see into the thin elder's mind. What they did previously made him think that the jade flute was useful and that he would attack after they gathered. This was all part of the Divine Church of Asura's plan. The Divine Church of Asura's leader was not trying to escape but to create trouble for the Holy Church of Light. He wanted the saint to be distracted by the Asuras so that they could escape. That would be troublesome. The Divine Church of Asura's leader was not an ordinary person. Although his cultivation level was not as high as Chu Li's, he was still a Holy Church of Light priest. If he deliberately caused trouble, the damage would be unimaginable. He was not afraid of Sun Mingyue, but he was afraid that the divine church of Azura's leader would kill. That would be a sin. The thin elder scoffed. Everyone, let's attack together. The crowd of Azuras pounced on Chuli. They were densely packed and did not give Chuli a chance to dodge. Chuli disappeared in a flash. By the time they reached the center, he was already gone. He landed on a treetop and sat in a lotus position. It was as if an invisible force was supporting him as he sat steadily. He formed a seal with his hands, and his posture was the same as the Buddha of light in his mind. His lips moved as he chanted the great light scripture. It sounded like he was murmuring, but it was clear enough to be heard. His posture and movements were the same as the Buddha of light in his mind. His body, mind, hands, and mouth were connected. His lips were synchronized with the Buddha's, and the sound was the same. It was as if he was chanting the Buddha of light through his own mouth. Amidst the murmuring of Buddha's voice, the great light scripture floated into their minds like invisible lotuses. The Azuras were about to turn around and rush at him. As soon as the Buddha's voice entered their ears, they stopped moving. They seemed to be deep in thought as they listened attentively. Unknowingly, the coldness on their faces disappeared and they became calm again. The murderous intent in his chest slowly dissipated along with the great light scripture. Chuli felt neither sorrow nor joy, neither anger nor resentment. There was only peace and light in his heart. His body and the great light scripture had merged into one. The great light scripture was him, and he was the great light scripture. It was difficult to distinguish one from the other. Over and over again, the great light scripture circulated and resounded in the Azura's ears. The sound grew louder and louder, but they listened to it as if they were intoxicated. In the end, they even smiled. Chuli slowly came to a stop. His expression was solemn, and his face glowed brightly as if the great light Buddha had appeared. Chuli said in a low voice, "Everyone, follow me." Everyone cupped their fists and respectfully followed behind him into the depths of the forest. The 4 Azuras who had been severely injured by Chuli also stood up and followed behind him with great difficulty. Chuli leaped behind them and clapped his hands lightly, dispelling the inner energy of the earth matrix and reincarnation scripture. Then, he returned to the front to lead the way. Chuli's movements were steady, calm, and unhurried. There was an air of serenity in his movements, but his footsteps were extremely fast. In just a short while, he had passed through the dense forest and reached the peak of the mountain. Then, he continued to climb. When they were halfway up the mountain, the white jade talisman in Chuli's sleeve flew out. The surrounding scenery did not change much, but the mountain could no longer be seen from the outside. Chuli was in the eye of the formation, so he could see through the formation through the omniscient mirror. If he took another step, the omniscient mirror would lose its effect. When he saw the situation outside, he could not help but be speechless. What a powerful formation! A formation that could conceal a mountain was not an ordinary formation. It seemed that the great light peak's strength was unfathomable, and there was a hidden formation master among them. However, it could also be a formation set up by the Tianluo sect. He turned to look at the Azuras and said, "All of you should calm down and cultivate here. Don't have any thoughts that you shouldn't have. I'm afraid that your bishop is in danger." The Azuras remained silent. They had lost their killing intent, but that did not mean that they had changed their minds. They were just not as extreme when they were facing Chuli, so they did not want to make a move. Deep down, they were still eager to make a move. They thought that if the bishop could cause chaos in the Holy Church of Light, they would be able to seize the opportunity to regain their freedom and dominate the world. Then, they were inexplicably worried. This fellow's great light scripture was so powerful that they could not help but want to convert to him. Now that the bishop was not here, and without the bishop's treasures to restrain the great light scripture, they would have to convert to him if he chanted the scripture one more time. That would mean that they would never be free. When they thought of this, they were inexplicably worried and glared at Chuli, Chu raised his eyebrows as he saw through their thoughts. He found a huge rock and sat in the lotus position. Then, he formed a seal with his hands and once again merged with the Buddha of great light in his mind. His movements, speech became one, connecting the inside and the outside. His mouth was the Buddha's mouth, and his voice was the Buddha's voice. The great light scripture was like a lotus falling on their bodies, making them want to convert again. When Chu began to chant the great light scripture, he did not know how much time had passed. He was completely immersed in the great light scripture and did not divert his attention at all. His heart was pure and his mind was pure, which was why he had such a wonderful power. When dusk arrived, Chu came back to his senses and realized that he had unknowingly been chanting the great light scripture for an entire day. He could not help but sigh inwardly. He did not expect the great light scripture to be so powerful. Looking at the Asura's lowered brows and extremely submissive faces, he knew that their ferocious nature had been suppressed. This was conversion. This was the power of Buddhism. From now on, if there were no accidents, they would obey his orders without question, just like a disciple to their master. Chu smiled. It was a great surprise to be able to control the Asuras. When Sun Mingyue returned, she would not take back control of these Asuras and would instead demand their secrets. From then on, he would have such a secret force that could be used as a surprise attack at critical times. The dusk grew darker. A white figure suddenly flashed and Sun Mingyue appeared in front of him. Chu gave a fist salute. Sun Mingyue glanced at the Asuras around Chu and looked at him in surprise. "You," Chu smiled. "I've been chanting the great light scripture for an entire day. It's working." "Good." Sun Mingyue nodded slowly. "You were almost deceived by that guy. You did well. From now on, you'll be in charge of these guys." "You didn't find that guy?" "No." Sun Mingyue frowned and scoffed. "Let's go back to the Great Light Peak first. We'll look for him in a few days." Chu said, "I have a feeling that he'll get into big trouble. It's better to find him as soon as possible." Sun Mingyue glared at him before pulling his sleeve and disappearing. The next moment, she appeared in the Divine Light Basilica. She let go of Chu sleeve and waved her hand. "Go do what you need to do. You can continue your isolated cultivation at the peak or go to the Spirit Medicine Nursery at the first peak." "I'll go to the isolated cultivation area," Chu said. He did not want to get too involved with the Great Light Peak. The less he had, the better. He could not stand Zhou Huang being too friendly to him. Duing suddenly entered and curtsied. "My saint, the people from Stargazing Pavilion have left with the corpses. They're here." Sun Mingyue frowned. "How many of them?" "4 of them left with the corpses and went back the way they came." Chapter 3190. Chu saw that she did not look well and did not say anything else. Sun Mingyue could not tolerate him pointing fingers, so it was better for her to keep her mouth shut. He had a bad feeling. If the Stargazing Pavilion disciples came to question him, there would still be room for negotiation. However, they took the corpses away and did not come to Great Light Peak at all. It was obvious that they had made up their mind to fight and not waste their time. Now that things had come to this, there was no point in saying anything more. Sun Mingyue would only become more annoyed. He cupped his fists, turned around and walked out. "What do you think we should do?" Sun Mingyue suddenly asked. Chu stopped and turned to look at her. "It's up to you, Saint. Let's gather? Govern Shidan? The barbarians are wounded in the wilderness? Lie." Chu act of sacrificing himself to protect her had earned her trust. In addition to his high cultivation level, he held a different position in her heart. Most importantly, at this critical juncture, she wanted to hear the opinions of others as a reference. Chu said, "In my opinion, we should strike first and take care of Stargazing Pavilion before they attack." "Stupid idea. That's suicidal." Sun Mingyue scoffed. Chu Li smiled. Saint doesn't want to fight, and I don't think Stargazing Pavilion wants to fight either. They're afraid of both sides and don't want to fight either. And then we'll find a way out and leave room for negotiation. Just tell me what to do, don't beat around the bush. I'll go to Stargazing Pavilion and tell them that the person who killed their disciples is the Bishop of the Divine Church of Azura. He has broken free from the Saints' control and wants the two sects to fight each other. He disappeared after killing the disciples, so I'll ask Stargazing Pavilion to track him down and the truth will be revealed. Bishop of the Divine Church of Azura. Sun Mingyue nodded slowly. That's a good idea. Azura was connected to the Outland, so it was difficult for Stargazing Pavilion and Prophecy Pavilion to predict their actions. That was why Lu Chenyu led Azura to attack Prophecy Pavilion but failed. The root of the failure was that Prophecy Pavilion could not predict Azura but Lu Chenyu. It was most suitable for Zhao Dai to lead this group of Azura. Chu Li's Heavenly Heart technique was profound, so Prophecy Pavilion could not predict his actions. Thus, nobody knew that he was leading Azura. Chu Li said, Saint, I think he might really be the one behind this. Sun Mingyue's face darkened and she snorted coldly. This guy is unpredictable. He's capable of doing this. She was infuriated at the thought of the Azura Divine cult leader. She had never suffered such a great loss before. She had been deceived and betrayed him at the crucial moment. This move is like hitting a snake where it hurts. It's the most vicious one. I'm guessing that the leaders of the other three sects wouldn't dare to do this, Chu Li said. Only a lunatic like him would do something like this. But you have to be careful about who you choose to go to the Stargazing Pavilion. Sun Mingyue sized him up, her bright eyes flashing with brilliant colors. This was a dangerous mission. Even if the Stargazing Pavilion accepted this explanation, it did not mean that they would not kill them. They were arrogant and did not treat anyone outside of the Fu dynasty as human beings. They might even kill the messenger to establish their authority and vent their anger. Chu Li said, Saint, give me the position of priest. I'll go there myself. Guardian King. Sun Mingyue glared at him in annoyance. You're willing to throw away your life for the position of Guardian King. Chu Li smiled. Fortune comes from danger. Of course, I won't let go of such a good opportunity. If you can return safely, you'll be a priest. Sun Mingyue said. Chu Li shook his head. I want to be a priest first before going to the Stargazing Pavilion. Even if I die, I'll die as a priest. You'll have to wait for Priest Lu and Priest Fong to return, Sun Mingyue said. Chu Li said, then we'll wait for them to return. All right, we'll do as you say. Sun Mingyue scoffed. Zhao Dai will become a priest? No. Lu Chenyu was shocked and shook his head. He's too young and his qualifications are not convincing. If we really announce it, I'm afraid that the Holy Church of Light won't be convinced. We can't break the rules. The Divine Light Basilica was dazzling. The morning sunlight was reflected by the ice peak outside, making it even brighter. Lu Chenyu's face was ruddy. His injuries were almost healed. Fang Qingyang stood at the side with a gloomy face and looked at Chu Li. He knew that Zhao Dai would become a priest one day. Cultivation was the foundation of a priest. With a strong enough cultivation, it would not be difficult for him to make contributions. However, he did not expect it to happen so soon. With Zhao Dai's contributions, it's more than enough for him to become a priest, Sun Mingyue said calmly. I just wanted to train him because of his personality. However, things are different now. Priest Qing and priest, he have ascended to the great light surpassing state. The position of priest can't be left empty. It needs someone with sufficient cultivation. He's the most suitable. Saint Young Zhao is too young. Lu Chenyu sighed. He could not help but feel sad when he thought of the two fallen priests. They were old friends for decades. It was a pity that they had ascended to the great light surpassing state so early. He looked at Fong Qingyang, who was in a daze. Young Fong, what do you think? Elder Lu, I'm sorry. Fong Qingyang fist saluted and said seriously, Branch Leader Zhao's cultivation is profound. I'm far inferior to you. You've also made great contributions. I have no doubts about becoming a priest. Young Fong, you? Lu Qinyu stared at him in shock. He had thought that Fong Qingyang would not agree. After all, Chu Li was younger than Fong Qingyang and had less experience. He had only been in the church for about 2 years. Fong Qingyang said, We need a more powerful master to become a priest to stabilize the people. Otherwise, we'll be weak and without deterrence. The other 3 sects will inevitably covet us and become restless. That'll be troublesome. Sun Mingyue slowly said, Priest's words make sense. Priest Lu, you should know how serious the situation is now. Sigh, I'm old. It's time for me to enter the hermit peaks. Lu Qinyu sighed. Sun Mingyue's face darkened. Priest Lu, what do you mean by that? Lu Qinyu shook his head. Don't worry, Saint. I won't quit now. We'll talk about it after this. Sun Mingyue scoffed. You're not even 100 years old. Priest Lu, don't even think about getting some peace. Lu Qinyu smiled bitterly and nodded. Sun Mingyue turned to look at Chu Li. All right, you're a priest now. Chu Li smiled and fist saluted. Thank you, Saint. Thank you, priest. Fong Qingyang nodded without saying a word. Lu Qinyu said, Young Zhao, since you've become a priest, we're of the same rank. Just call me Elder Lu. I'm in charge of the Fu dynasty, while young Fong is in charge of the Ji dynasty. Sun Mingyue frowned. Zhao Dave, you'll be in charge of the Qiu dynasty. Chu Li fist saluted. Yes. Sun Mingyue said, a priest's position is aloof. He won't be in charge of specific matters. The altar leader will handle the specific matters. A priest will be in charge of supervision, deterrence, and inspection. Chu Li slowly nodded. I'll head to the stargazing pavilion then. Remember, run when you need to, Sun Mingyue said. Chu Li smiled and nodded. I've just become a priest. I cherish my life. Don't worry, Saint. He fist saluted Lu Qinyu and Fong Qingyang before turning and striding out of the Divine Light Basilica. Saint, who is young Zhao? Lu Qinyu asked. Sun Mingyue said, He's going to the stargazing pavilion to defend himself. Lu Qinyu's expression changed. Isn't that suicide? He had the most dealings with the martial arts world of the Fu dynasty. He knew the 8 major sects of the Fu dynasty very well. They were arrogant and looked down on the martial arts world of the Li dynasty. They felt that they were all peasants who could not withstand a single blow and were not worth mentioning. If they were unhappy, they could just kill them without wasting their breath. The disciples of the Stargazing Pavilion had died in the Li dynasty. The Stargazing Pavilion must be furious and eager to deal with the Holy Church of Light. If they went there now, it would be no different from suicide. Chapter 3191. Just as Chu Li was about to descend the Great Light Peak, a white figure flashed before his eyes. Sun Mingyue appeared out of thin air. Chu Li stopped and fist saluted. Saint. Sun Mingyue took out a jade pendant and handed it to Chu Li. Take this. Chu Li took it. It was warm and delicate and glowed. It was obvious that it was an extraordinary item. What's this? Chu Li touched the jade pendant. Sun Mingyue glared at him. Chu Li suddenly felt embarrassed. The pendant he took out from her chest still had her warmth and fragrance. It was a little frivolous to touch it like this. He nonchalantly put away the jade pendant and put it in his bosom. Why did the saint lady give me this? I can sense it, Sun Mingyue said. If you're in danger, crush this pendant and I'll appear. Chu Li was surprised. He had a treasure like this too. It was condensed by his all-seeing divine power and needed to be refined for a month. If he was in danger, he could sense it by crushing it and rush over immediately. It was not easy to refine this item, but he had the all-seeing divine power. Even if the materials were difficult to obtain, he could still refine it. That was why all the women around him had one in case he could not save them in time. He did not expect Sun Mingyue to have one too. He took it out and looked at it. With the saint's item, how could the two royal tombs lose their lives? As long as they crushed the pendant, Sun Mingyue would sense it and arrive in time to save them. Sun Mingyue said, "They don't have this." Chu Li smiled. "I'm flattered that the saint favors me so much." Sun Mingyue glared at him coldly. "If they feel restricted, I can appear anytime with this pendant." "I see." Chu Li was enlightened. He had thought about it too. If not for this, he would not want this pendant. If Sun Mingyue suddenly appeared when he was Chu Li or doing something secret, everything would be exposed. Even if the four royal tombs did not have as many secrets as he did, the thought of the saint appearing at any time made them uncomfortable. Sun Mingyue said, "It's too dangerous for you to go to Stargazing Pavilion this time. Just take this and give it to me when you return." "Thank you, Saint." Chu Li fist saluted. "I'll take my leave now. Go." Sun Mingyue waved her hand and disappeared. In a flash, Chu Li appeared at the foot of a mountain and glided into the mountain. Through the omniscient mirror, he saw the Asuras one by one. They each had their own rooms. Some were eating, while others were resting. They were slacking off and not cultivating. Chu Li appeared next to a thin elder, who was the deputy commander. The bishop of the Divine Church of Asura had entrusted this group of Asuras to him, asking him to lead them in a rebellion. They had wanted to kill him, but Chu Li had instigated their rebellion instead. The thin elder was sitting cross-legged on the bed, channeling when he suddenly opened his eyes and saw Chu Li. He closed fist saluted, "Greetings, young master." Chu Li asked, "Jiang Heng, do you have anything that belonged to your bishop?" "This." A hesitant look appeared on the thin elder's face. Now that he had completely converted to Chu Li's words were equivalent to his master's words. He had no intention of resisting, but when it came to the bishop that he had always respected, he was a little hesitant. He did not know if he should tell the truth. Chu Li said, "I want to have a chat with your bishop so that he can convert." Jiang Heng shook his head and said, "Young master, please don't have such hopes." Chu Li smiled. "Are you saying that I can't convert him?" "Yes, even the saint couldn't convert the bishop back then." Jiang Heng slowly said, "The bishop's Asura power technique is at a profound level, and the Great Light Scripture can't convert him." Chu Li asked, "Between my Great Light Scripture and the saint, which one is stronger?" "The saint," Jiang Heng answered. Chu Li frowned at him. Jiang Heng said, "Young master, we've all been converted by the saint before. Later on, the bishop helped us break free from the saint's restraints. Although you've converted us again, we'll still break free if the bishop makes a move." "Your bishop can break the Great Light Scripture?" Chu Li frowned. "If he's that powerful, he doesn't have to wait until the saint is distracted to make a move. He can just fight the saint head-on." Chu Li raised his eyebrows as he saw something strange in Jiang Heng's mind. A handsome middle-aged man in a green robe was holding a blood-red bead and rolling it between the eyebrows of the Asuras. After rolling it more than 10 times, the Asuras that were rolled began to change their appearance. Their eyes became long and narrow, and their fingernails grew long and gleamed like sharp blades. Chu Li immediately understood that this was the method to break the conversion. Through this blood-red bead, the bishop of the Divine Asura Church broke the conversion of the people. However, they still managed to hide it from Sun Mingyue. It was a brilliant method. Jiang Heng said, "The saint's cultivation level is high, and we're no match for her. If we fight the saint head-on, the saint will get rid of us first, and the bishop won't have any help. He won't be able to become the bishop, so he won't fight the saint head-on." "What about now?" Chu Li scoffed. "Since you've already rebelled, why hasn't he shown himself?" Jiang Heng frowned and remained silent. Chu Li calmly said, He abandoned you and escaped on his own. Impossible. Jiang Heng shook his head. Chu Li smiled and remained silent. Jiang Heng said, "The bishop is ambitious, and he needs our help to succeed. He can't do it alone." "Tell me, what does he have with him?" Chu Li scoffed. "This." Jiang Heng's intuition told him that Chu Li wanted to harm the bishop. With the bishop's personal belongings, it would be like adding wings to a tiger, so he could not say it out loud. Chu Li glared at him and scoffed. "You're so loyal." He strode to the bookshelf and took out a thick scripture book. He flipped through it casually and saw that the scripture was from the Great Light Scripture. Chu Li nodded nonchalantly as he flipped through it. "I didn't expect him to study the Great Light Scripture." "You?" Jiang Heng looked at Chu Li in shock. There were about 100 books on the bookshelf, so it was not a fluke that he was able to find this book. Chu Li glanced at him. "This book has a strong aura, and it's not hard to find it if you're sensitive. This belongs to your bishop, right?" Jiang Heng shook his head and remained silent. Chu Li ignored him and continued to read the scripture book. There were some scribbles and narration left on the book. It was obvious that the bishop of the Divine Church of Azura was studying this Great Light Scripture. If he really comprehended it, it would be troublesome. Not only would the Great Light Scripture not be able to restrain him, but it could also restrain the cultivator of the Great Light Scripture. Jiang Heng stared at the scripture book with a conflicted expression. Chu Li suddenly stopped. A line of scribbles caught his attention because it was written with the words, "Wu City." Wu City was the place where the stargazing pavilion disciple died. Wu City was an inconspicuous small town, so why would the bishop of the Divine Church of Azura write Wu City here? Could it be that the bishop of the Divine Church of Azura really killed the stargazing pavilion disciple? More importantly, how did he know that the stargazing pavilion disciple would be in Wu City? Chapter 3192. As he thought about it, his expression changed slightly. Jiang Heng saw the change in his expression and followed suit. Could it be that he found out what was written on the bishop? Chu Li looked up at Jiang Heng and asked, "Do you know where your bishop went?" "I really don't know." Jiang Heng shook his head. Chu Li looked into Jiang Heng's mind through the omniscient mirror. He really did not know where the bishop of the Divine Church of Azura went. He originally thought that with the all-seeing divine power and the item that the bishop of the Divine Church of Azura carried, he would be able to find his whereabouts. In reality, he could not sense the bishop of the Divine Church of Azura. It did not seem like the bishop of the Divine Church of Azura had died. It was more like a strange force had blocked his divine power. The bishop of the Divine Church of Azura had a high cultivation level. Azura's energy was connected to the outland and was not in this world. Therefore, the peering technique could not detect their location. However, the peering technique was different from the all-seeing divine power. His peering technique could not detect their location, but the all-seeing divine power could. Therefore, it might not be the bishop of the Divine Church of Azura. There might be external help, treasures, or masters. Chu Li frowned and thought for a moment. He waved his hand and said, "Forget it, continue cultivating." He turned around and fluttered away from the peak. He used his light body technique and ran to the foot of Falling Star Peak. Falling Star Peak was protected by a formation. The dense fog prevented people from getting close. He stood outside the fog and closed fist saluted. "Priest of the Holy Church of Light, Zhao Dave, is here to visit Stargazing Pavilion." His voice was loud and clear, spreading far and wide, lingering around Falling Star Peak without dissipating. A moment later, two young men in blue shirts appeared in front of Chu Li and stared at him coldly. Chu Li closed fist saluted. "I'm Zhao Dave. May I enter the pavilion to meet Pavilion Leader Zhu of Stargazing Pavilion?" "You're from the Holy Church of Light." "That's right. Then you can't enter." The two of them crossed their arms and looked at him coldly. "Why is that?" Chu frowned and said, "Is this how the stargazing pavilion treats its guests? Isn't it beneath the magnanimity of the 8 major sects? What kind of magnanimity is there to speak of with the people who killed our fellow disciples?" One of the young men said coldly, "The Holy Church of Light doesn't have to be so arrogant. We will never forgive you." "Let's not talk about whether I'll forgive you or not. As a Holy Church of Light priest, do I not have the right to meet Pavilion Leader Zhu? Pavilion Master is in secluded cultivation, comprehending the Tao of heavenly deity. We can't disturb him." "What about the Guardian? The 2 protectors are not in the pavilion. They went out to handle some matters." "What about the 4-star ambassadors?" Chu asked. He knew the authority of the stargazing pavilion. Below the pavilion master was the protector, below the protector were the 4 directions stargazing envoys, and there were no positions below the stargazing envoys. "The 4 stargazers have fallen." The young man snorted coldly. "But the stargazers might not want to see you." No matter how good Chu temper was, he was still a little annoyed. These people were too arrogant and it was really infuriating. Thinking of this, he narrowed his eyes and said, "You're forcing me to hit you. Let's see if you have the guts." The 2 of them crossed their arms and looked at him from the corner of their eyes. They sneered, thinking that he would not dare to act recklessly. This was the stargazing pavilion after all. No matter how arrogant the Holy Church of Light was, they could only be arrogant in the Li dynasty. They had to behave themselves in the Fu dynasty. Chu suddenly swung his arm. Slap, slap. 2 crisp slaps were heard. The 2 young men covered their faces in disbelief and widened their eyes. Chu scoffed. "Again? Gather? Ironwood Emperor inlay? Play? How dare you?" The 2 men roared and pounced on him. Bang bang! Chu kicked twice and the 2 men were sent flying. They each crashed into a tree, and with a dull thud, leaves rustled from the tree. The 2 men fell limply under the tree roots, feeling even more incredulous. Chu scoffed. "Their martial arts are weak, but they talk big. Are these the disciples of Stargazing Pavilion?" "You!" The 2 men gritted their teeth but did not say anything. They did not expect Chu cultivation level to be so high. They had been thinking of ways to provoke him, and were actually prepared for Chu sudden attack. They did not expect that even though they were careful, they still could not defend themselves. Chu continued, "Does Stargazing Pavilion really think that the Holy Church of Light is so easily bullied? How dare you be so arrogant in Stargazing Pavilion?" One of the young men gritted his teeth and said coldly, "Aren't you afraid that we will attack the Holy Church of Light?" Chu shook his head. "Haven't you already made up your mind to attack us? The pavilion leader has not come out of isolated cultivation, so nothing has been decided." The young man scoffed. "But you killed our fellow disciples, we can't just let it go." Chu said, "Stargazing Pavilion is really capable. Your disciples are obviously not dead, but you pretended to be dead. Are you looking for an excuse to attack us?" The 2 men's faces darkened. They were confused and angry. "Looking for an excuse?" Chu said, "Your 4 fellow disciples are not dead." He was a little disappointed. These 2 men did not know what was going on and did not manage to trick them. When he saw the book of the Bishop of the Divine Church of Azura, he suddenly had a flash of inspiration. He thought that the 4 disciples of Stargazing Pavilion who died in Wu Town might not really be disciples of Stargazing Pavilion. Why were the heads of the corpses missing? The usual thought was that they could not be revived, but from another perspective, could it be that they were trying to hide their identities? They would definitely know if they were really disciples of Stargazing Pavilion. After they arrived at Wu Town, they did not do anything and left immediately. It could be a bluff, or because the dead were not their disciples, so they could not be bothered. However, if they were really disciples of Stargazing Pavilion, it meant that there was a conspiracy. Someone was secretly plotting against the Holy Church of Light and Stargazing Pavilion. He wanted to make it clear, but Stargazing Pavilion refused to let him in. This made him extremely angry, so he directly attacked. The two disciples of Stargazing Pavilion frowned and looked at each other doubtfully. "Senior brother, they are really not dead?" Chu Li scoffed. "You will know once you go in and report." "Alright, just you wait." The two did not care about revenge. Their attention was completely attracted by Chu Li's words, so they quickly turned around and went back. After a while, a young man in a blue shirt appeared again. He said coldly, "Follow me, Stargazer Yang Guan wants to see you." Chu Li scoffed. "Lead the way." The young man in a blue shirt stared at him coldly, then turned around and walked inside. Chu Li followed closely behind. Chu Li was already familiar with this place, so he went straight to a cave. It was the cave that he came to before. He just arrived at Yang Tianji, who was sitting by the ice table. Yang Tianji sat by the table lazily and looked at him from head to toe. He shook his head. "The Holy Church of Light really has a few talents. Speak, if you have anything to say, just say it. I'm listening." Chu Li said, "The 4 people who died in Wu Town were not disciples of Stargazing Pavilion." "How do you know?" Yang Tianji asked. Chu Li scoffed. "Intuition." Yang Tianji chuckled and said lazily, "You really dare to dream." Chu Li said, "I also know that you have subdued the bishop of the Divine Church of Azura." "That's wishful thinking." Yang Tianji's face darkened. Chapter 3193. Chu Li shook his head. "Stargazing Pavilion is one of the 8 major sections. I don't think so." "You're courting death." Yang Tianji yelled and suddenly struck with his palm. At first glance, it looked like nothing out of the ordinary, but Chu Li's omniscient mirror saw a ball of starlight falling from the sky and condensing in his palm. The blue light flashed and condensed into a dark blue diamond that shot towards him. Without the omniscient mirror, he could see with his eyes that the palm energy was still invisible. He could not even feel the palm energy approaching him. He knew that this was Stargazing Pavilion's minor star palm energy. It was one of the divine techniques of Stargazing Pavilion and was said to be exceptionally powerful. Chu Li struck with his divine light fist. Bang! The 2 fists collided like 2 rocks colliding, emitting a dull explosive sound, carrying with it a soul-stirring power. "Not bad." Yang Tianji snorted coldly and struck out with his palm again. Chu Li did not back down and struck with his divine light fist. He felt the minor star palm energy penetrating his body. It was solid and pure as it tried to penetrate his organs. However, it was converted by the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture and integrated into his body. This solid and pure palm energy was of the same origin as the Heavenly Heart technique, so it was easy to convert. Bang! An even louder sound rang out, and Yang Tianji took a step back. Chu Li took another step forward and struck again. Bang 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 bang! Chu Li struck 10 times in a row. In the beginning, Yang Tianji was still able to fight evenly with Chu Li. However, as time went on, he began to retreat. Even though the blue radiance between his palms was flashing and the dark blue brilliance was becoming more and more concentrated, Chu Li's divine light fist was always stronger than his, and he was being pressured to the point where he could not breathe. Chu Li suddenly retracted his fist. Yang Tianji was already in front of the ice wall, and there was nowhere to retreat. "Can we talk properly now?" Chu Li asked calmly. "Alright, you finally have the right to talk to me." Yang Tianji nodded. He looked calm and did not look defeated at all. It was as if he was testing Chu Li's cultivation level, and it made people suspect that he did not use his full strength. Chu Li knew that he did not use his full strength, so he noticed that his opponent did not have the intention to fight to the death. His hostility towards the Holy Church of Light was not as strong, and he did not have the intention to kill either. Chu Li said, "Stargazing Yang should know that we tamed Azura." Yes, it is indeed unique. Yang Tianji said calmly. The Asuras are wild and hard to tame, and they never submit to anyone. The only reason they can be tamed is because of your Great Light Scripture. The Great Light Scripture does have some power. Chu Li calmly said, the 4 people who died were killed by the Bishop of the Divine Church of Azura. Why do you say that? Of course, we're confident in this. Chu Li said, I won't speak without thinking. He didn't kill those 4 people on the spur of the moment. It was premeditated, and your accomplices are most likely you. Not us. Yang Tianji said flatly. Chu Li frowned as he stared at him. His instincts told him that he was telling the truth. If it's not you, then it must be someone else. Chu Li pondered. The 4 people who died weren't your disciples, right? No. Yang Tianji shook his head lightly. Chu Li rubbed his chin and muttered, that's strange. Based on my previous speculation, perhaps you're looking for an excuse to start a war against the Holy Church of Light, or perhaps someone is trying to sow discord between us. However, if your disciples aren't dead, then there's no point in trying to sow discord. Could it be that my speculation is wrong? Yang Tianji said in a low voice, you're wrong. Chu Li frowned as he looked at him. Yang Tianji said, the disciples of the Stargazing Pavilion were in danger, but they had the life-saving talisman with them, so they sensed the danger and escaped in advance. The 4 bodies aren't our disciples, but it's true that someone wanted to kill our disciples. Then someone is trying to sow discord. Chu Li frowned. The disciples of the Stargazing Pavilion really aren't dead? Yang Tianji nodded. They're safe and sound. Chu Li smiled bitterly. He immediately realized that they were the ones who were frightened by the mere twang of a bowstring, and they scared him. The disciples of the Stargazing Pavilion were not dead, and they came to collect the 4 bodies. They must have wanted to investigate, but Sun Mingwei and him thought that the Stargazing Pavilion had murderous intentions, so they did not want to waste any more time, so they asked him to come over. It turned out to be a false alarm. Yang Tianji looked at him with a faint smile. He obviously saw through everything, and his face was full of mockery. Chu Li said in a low voice, then can the pavilion find the Bishop of the Divine Church of Azura? Why are you looking for him? This matter has something to do with him, and the murderer is most likely him. Chu Li shook his head. Find him, and find out who ordered him to do so. What if there's no one else, and he's trying to sow discord? Yang Tianji said disapprovingly. He has the guts to do so. Chu Li frowned. My intuition tells me that there's someone behind this, and I'm afraid that the target is the Stargazing Pavilion. Yang Tianji said calmly, why do you think so? Chu Li said, the person who dares to kill the disciples of the Stargazing Pavilion is not an ordinary sect. The Stargazing Pavilion has a divine plan to be able to find out in the end, so their strength must be on par with yours, and they're not afraid of your sect's revenge. That makes sense. Yang Tianji nodded. Chu Li pondered. If our 2 sects were to fight, even if the Stargazing Pavilion is strong, the Holy Church of Light is not completely defenseless. Even if we can't achieve a lose-lose situation, we'll still hurt both of you. At this time, who benefits the most? Well, this. Yang Tianji did not say anything. It was possible for any of the 7 major sections. The 8 major sects were in conflict with each other, and they fought each other non-stop. If one were to say who wanted to destroy the Stargazing Pavilion the most, it would be the other 7 sections. Chu Li said, then we can only find the Bishop of the Divine Church of Azura. Alright, I'll think of a way. Yang Tianji felt that what Chu Li said was not unreasonable. Chu Li smiled. Don't tell me he's in the hands of the Stargazing Pavilion? Yang Tianji stared at him coldly. The Stargazing Pavilion would not play such petty tricks. Don't measure the heart of a gentleman with your own mean measure. Chu Li fist saluted and smiled. If that's the case, can our 2 sects reconcile? Yang Tianji laughed and shook his head. You're smart enough to stop in time this time. We didn't plan to do anything to you. Chu Li suppressed his anger, fist saluted and smiled. If that's the case, then I'll take my leave. I won't see you out. Yang Tianji smiled. Chu Li turned around and walked out. He felt dejected and was filled with anger. Yang Tianji squinted his eyes and stared at Chu Li. He looked up at the sky and observed the weather. In the end, he frowned and shook his head. He could not see through Chu Li's background. A young man in a blue robe glided in. Masters Jr., do you want to kill him? He had a slender body and a jade-like face. His expression was calm. Yang Tianji shook his head. Can you take him down? Yes. The young man nodded. Yang Tianji pondered for a moment and finally shook his head. Forget it. Let's not care about him for now. Capture the bishop of the Divine Church of Azura. Yes. The young man fist saluted and left. Chu Li was led out of the meteorite peak by a young man in a blue robe. He did not see the two people from the Liang Shan faction. He had a sudden thought and faintly felt that they were safe. It seemed that he had changed their fates. He was 10 miles away from the meteorite peak when he suddenly stopped. Chapter 3194. Chu Li sized him up and fist saluted. May I know what business you have here? Zhao Dai. The handsome young man replied, The Holy Church of Light's priest, am I right? Chu Li nodded. That's me. It's not easy to become a priest at such a young age. Unfortunately, you shouldn't have come to Stargazing Pavilion to act so presumptuously. The handsome young man said coldly, Remember my name, Li Xinghe. Without waiting for Chu Li to reply, he launched a palm strike. Both of them were about 6 meters apart. As soon as the palm strike was launched, the palm energy reached Chu Li's chest. Bam! Chu Li countered with his divine light fist and stood firmly on the spot. The surrounding sand suddenly rose, and the thick and soft pine needles on the ground were rolled up, fluttering in the air. Chu Li frowned as he looked at Li Xinghe. Li Xinghe's cultivation level was higher than Yang Tianji's and was only slightly inferior to Chu Li. If Chu Li did not show his true abilities, he might not be able to suppress him. After all, Stargazing Pavilion's martial arts were much more powerful. Li Xinghe scoffed. You're quite capable. He was slightly shocked by Chu Li's strength. He initially thought it would be a piece of cake, but it seemed like that was not the case. Chu Li asked, What are you trying to do? Just to teach you a lesson. Don't worry, I won't kill you, Li Xinghe replied. As he spoke, he launched another palm strike. Chu Li countered with his divine light fist, and neither of them took a step back. Li Xinghe scoffed and launched another palm strike. Chu Li countered with a fist and scoffed. You must be bored. That's right. Li Xinghe said, The Holy Church of Light has been getting more and more arrogant these past few years. It's time to teach you a lesson. Unfortunately, Master's uncle and the others prefer stability and don't want to advance. They don't want to teach you a lesson. Bam, bam, bam. Both of them continued to fight as they spoke. Chu Li said, Young Master Li, are you looking down on the Holy Church of Light? Should I be looking down on the Holy Church of Light? Li Xinghe sneered and shook his head. You're just a bunch of monkeys who call themselves kings when there are no tigers in the mountains. Chu Li said with a faint smile, The Stargazing Pavilion is indeed powerful, but we're not made of clay. If we really fight to the death, it's hard to say who will emerge victorious. Ha ha! Li Xinghe laughed heartily. You really have the guts to say such things. Don't you feel embarrassed? Chu Li said, If the Stargazing Pavilion is so powerful, why couldn't you capture the bishop of the Divine Church of Azura? Taking him down is as easy as flipping my hand. I want to deal with you first before dealing with him. Li Xinghe said indifferently, Do you think we can't do anything to him just because he's an Azura? Chu Li nodded slowly. Your Stargazing Pavilion can't do anything to him. You can't find him. Li Xinghe sneered. Ridiculous. Chu Li said, this bishop of the Divine Church of Azura is no ordinary person. It's very likely that someone is helping him. You don't have to brag, you'll know once you try. Bang bang. The two of them exchanged a punch and a palm once again. Li Xinghe frowned and grunted. What do you mean by that? Chu Li said, don't think that the stargazing pavilion is the only one with the ability to predict. You can give it a try if you don't believe me. Li Xinghe suddenly glided backward and turned his head to look at the two elders who had appeared out of nowhere. Chu Li frowned too. The two elders' light body techniques were outstanding. They were as fast as lightning and appeared in front of him in an instant. Their bodies were surging with murderous intent. It was obvious that they did not come with good intentions. More importantly, they were full of vigor. Through the omniscient mirror, their vigor was like a ball of flame that shrouded their bodies. Chu Li knew the identity of the two elders at first glance. They were from the Church of the Divine Blood. He turned his head to look behind him and saw 4 elders staring at him with a sinister look. Chu Li looked at Li Xinghe. Young Master Li, have you made it this far? Li Xinghe said with a gloomy expression. The Church of the Divine Blood is getting more and more insolent. Chu Li said, they're here to kill you, right? That's right. Li Xinghe said calmly, but you can't escape either. The rule of the Church of the Divine Blood is to leave no one alive. He turned his head to glare at one of the elders. You guys finally couldn't take it anymore. The elder had a plump figure and a round and small face. He grinned and said, Li Xinghe, we've finally caught you today. Could it be that all of this is your scheme? Li Xinghe said calmly. Yes, we initially wanted to reap the benefits when you guys fight. We didn't expect the stargazing pavilion to be so soft and not fight. The plump elder shook his head and said with a smile, then we can only light another fire and kill you. Do you think the stargazing pavilion will tolerate this? How arrogant. Kill me? Li Xinghe looked askance at him in disdain. With a few pieces of trash like you? We're more than enough to kill you. The plump elder shook his head and smiled. You're too arrogant. You wouldn't have fallen for it if you had foretold it. What a pity that you're the one who asked for it. What a joke. Li Xinghe took out a jade pendant and suddenly peeled it off. A white light flashed and he instantly disappeared. The round-faced elder's expression changed as he quickly looked around. Li Xinghe was nowhere to be seen. Chu Li was secretly surprised. He did not expect Li Xinghe to be so capable. This must be their treasure for escaping. He disappeared without hesitation and appeared deep in the forest in the next moment. Chi. A crisp whistling sound could be heard as Zhao Dai suddenly dodged to the side and evaded the finger force. After that, he disappeared from his original spot once again and fled into the distance. He was now Zhao Dai and he could not expose his god's limbs. Hence, he could only use the divine light body to escape. Chi 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 chi. Several finger forces shot out at the same time and sealed off all his escape routes. He waved his hands as he moved. Ding ding. The flying blades were shot down in the air and flew back, giving Chu Li a chance to catch his breath. Chu Li's 2 blades had blocked 2 finger forces. Without them, he would not have been able to avoid the finger forces. They were dense and precise, sealing off all his escape routes. Chi 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 chi. The continuous finger forces enveloped him again. Chu Li frowned. If this went on, he would not be able to escape from their finger forces. The 6 men's light body technique was not inferior to his. They chased closely behind him and attacked. Moreover, their finger forces were powerful and could shoot very far. Chu Li could only dodge to the side as he could not escape. These finger forces gave him an extremely dangerous feeling. He could not simply come into contact with them as his life would be in danger. He cursed Li Xinghe. Could this guy be trying to get someone else to do his dirty work? Pop pop. Chu Li released 2 divine light fists which collided with the finger forces. A dull sound was heard, giving him a chance to catch his breath. He realized that his divine light fists were able to block the finger forces. Boom, boom, boom. The sound was continuous as Chu fought against the six alone. His divine light fists collided with the continuous finger forces. He retreated as he fought. The six elders closed in on him, not giving him a chance to escape. Was the Church of the Divine Blood behind the incident in Liwu City? Chu asked. Haha, you're still thinking about this even when you're about to die. Interesting. The round-faced elder laughed. Chu asked, Did you guys bribe the bishop of the Divine Church of Azura? We didn't bribe him. We worked together. The round-faced elder laughed. However, it's useless for you to know this. Die. Chapter 3195. Chu nodded. Looks like you've been planning this for a long time. Are you planning to go against the Holy Church of Light? That's right. The rotund elder laughed. His fingers moved as if he was playing a zither. His short and thick fingers looked elegant. 5-finger energies were released at the same time and were shockingly sharp. A slight touch would be dangerous. Chu had never experienced the Church of the Divine Blood's Divine Blood Finger Antique Study before this because it was not an antique study that could be cultivated by just anyone. One could only start cultivating the Bloody Garment Divine Power at the 8th level. The 6 men were from the Church of the Divine Blood. What else do you people from the Church of the Divine Blood have? Show me. The round-faced elder clenched his teeth and launched a devouring blood palm. He suddenly withdrew his palm when Chu punched. Bang! A strange muffled sound was heard as the round-faced elder took the hit squarely. Not only did he not retreat, but he also turned into a shadow and crashed into Chu. Bang! Chu was sent flying. The blood in his body boiled and wanted to break free from the round-faced elder's control. Chu formed a mudra with both of his hands and shouted, Moo! The blood in his body calmed down again. He landed on a treetop lightly and shook his head while laughing. That's all you got. Goodbye. The treetop trembled as he turned into a shadow and shot far away. Go after him. The 6 elders chased after him. Chu's speed increased as if he was riding on the wind. He had switched to the Heavenly Heart technique to activate his light body technique, which increased his speed by 20%. In just a short while, he had widened the distance between him and the 6 elders. He flew 100 miles in one go before switching to the Divine Light technique. He slowed down and looked up at the treetop in front of him with a frown. Li Xinghe was standing on the treetop. His blue robe fluttered in the wind like a jade tree. He looked indescribably elegant. Brother Zhao, congratulations. Li Xinghe smiled and closed fist saluted. You're quite capable to be able to escape from the 6 of them. Chu Li's expression darkened. You're trying to get someone else to do your dirty work, aren't you? I'm sure you'll be able to escape from them. Li Xinghe shook his head and smiled. The old men from the Church of the Divine Blood are cruel. Let me remind you to be careful of their Divine Blood disintegration technique. Chu asked, What martial arts did you use earlier? That's our unique secret art, stellar transposition, Li Xinghe said. You don't have to hope for it. It's impossible to learn. Chu said, The shifting stars is the god's limbs, right? What's the big deal about the god's limbs? Li Xinghe said in disdain, How many people in the world can cultivate the god's limbs? Without heaven-defying luck, it is impossible to learn it. Our revolving star passage technique is different. Chu said, You're haunting me. What exactly do you want? It's a good thing, Li Xinghe said. Chu looked at him in silence. Li Xinghe smiled. How about our 2 sects cooperate? Cooperation? Chu frowned. Against the Church of the Divine Blood? Chapter 3196. Chu shook his head. What's in it for us to work together? You should know that the Church of Divine Blood is one of the 8 major sections. We'll vanish if they move a finger. You're too humble. The Holy Church of Light isn't that weak. Li Xinghe shook his head. If you're that weak, why would I work with you? Chu Li said, no matter what, the Stargazing Pavilion isn't afraid of the Church of Divine Blood, but the Holy Church of Light isn't. It's best not to provoke them. You have no other choice now. You can either be eliminated by the Church of Divine Blood or work with us and risk your life. Li Xinghe shook his head. You can only choose one. The Church of Divine Blood has their eyes on you. You can't escape. Chu Li said, their target is the Stargazing Pavilion. We'll be able to escape if we cut ties with you. After all, the Holy Church of Light isn't a pushover. They'll lose a few teeth even if they want to swallow us, which will give you an opportunity. Moreover, the Church of Divine Blood has many enemies. They won't let go of the chance to kick you when you're down. That's why they have their concerns. The Church of Divine Blood is bloodthirsty like wolves, Li Xinghe said. Do you think they'll weigh the pros and cons? They wouldn't be the Church of Divine Blood if that's the case. They're impulsive and hot-headed. They won't care about these things. They'll eliminate you first. Chu Li said, Young Master Li, your so-called cooperation is just for us to be the vanguard to wear them down. What's wrong with that? Li Xinghe said, do you think you can stop fighting the Church of Divine Blood if you don't cooperate with us? Since they're targeting the Holy Church of Light, they won't stop until they eliminate the Church of Light. Chu Li frowned at him. You're exaggerating. You should know if I'm exaggerating, Li Xinghe said. Chu Li shook his head. Forget it. I'm only a priest, not the saint. These words are useless to me. You can look for the saint. Li Xinghe said, pass these words to the saint. Let her think about it. I'll look for the saint later. How can we cooperate if she agrees? Chu Li asked. Li Xinghe said, we can predict their movements. If we inform you in time, we might even be able to lend you a hand. Chu Li frowned. Why don't the Stargazing Pavilion take action directly if we can predict their actions? You should understand, Li Xinghe said with a faint smile. Chu Li scoffed. You have the threat of the 7 major sects, but we also have the threat of the 3 major sections. That's why we'll each carry out our duties. You'll be responsible for the experts of the Divine Blood Church in the Li dynasty, and we'll be responsible for those in the Fu dynasty, Li Xinghe said. No matter how powerful the Holy Church of Light was, they would become public enemies if they entered the Fu dynasty, so they could not enter the Fu dynasty. Chu Li replied, I'll report this to the saint. Then I wish us a happy cooperation. Li Xinghe cupped his fists and said with a smile, let me remind you that they will be able to pursue you. Chu Li smiled faintly. Li Xinghe said, the Divine Blood Church has a secret technique called the snow-seeking plum blossom treading technique that allows them to track their opponents through their blood essence. You won't be able to shake them off if you fight them, and they will definitely catch up to you. That's why the Divine Blood Church is so terrifying. All right, I understand, Chu Li said calmly. I'd like to see what they're capable of. You can't beat them. Just run for your life, said Li Xinghe. Then, he cupped his fists and disappeared into the depths of the forest. Chu Li frowned as he pondered over Li Xinghe's words. To them, the Holy Church of Light was only a slightly powerful sect. They would not take them seriously at all. Were they really sincere in cooperating with the Holy Church of Light? As for the snow-seeking plum blossom treading technique from the Divine Blood Church, he did not care. By the time they caught up to him, he would already be at the Divine Light Basilica. As soon as he thought about it, he glided away and activated the Heavenly Heart technique, increasing his speed. The 9th level of the Heavenly Heart technique was rich and pure, allowing him to recover extremely quickly. It was enough for him to use his light body technique. As long as his body could take it, he could continue running without rest. The 6 masters from the Divine Blood Church were hot on his trail. In the end, Chu Li did not stop to rest. He did not eat, drink, or sleep. He ran all the way back to the Great Light Peak and arrived at the Divine Light Basilica. The Divine Light Basilica was as warm as spring. The midday sun shone outside the basilica, making the interior of the basilica bright and gentle. Sun Mingyue had taken off her white veil, revealing her beautiful face. She was pressing on the long desk and frowning as she stared at him. "Cooperate with the stargazing pavilion?" Chu Li nodded. "That's what Li Xinghe suggested. What do you think?" Sun Mingyue furrowed her brows and asked thoughtfully. Chu Li avoided the topic and said, "We'll have to teach them a lesson first and make them retreat. Otherwise, we'll be in endless trouble if they don't give up." The Church of the Divine Blood. Sun Mingyue's beautiful face was like a flawless white jade. She stood up and left the armchair. She walked to the long desk and paced around with her hands behind her back as she pondered. Chu Li stared at her beautiful face and guessed that she would agree in the end. She would not be willing to be left out. Sun Mingyue paced back and forth with her hands behind her back before she suddenly stopped. She stared at him and said slowly, "Zhao Dai, you're a priest now. Do you think we should cooperate?" Chu Li replied slowly, "We have no other choice but to cooperate with the stargazing pavilion. Otherwise, the Holy Church of Light will be doomed. Let's hurt the Church of the Divine Blood first, so that they'll have second thoughts. Wouldn't it be safer to cooperate after that?" Sun Mingyue asked. Chu Li shook his head. "It would be safer for other sects to do this, but the Church of the Divine Blood is different. They don't take us seriously. They see us as fat lambs and wolves. They won't let us go. Would they dare to ignore the threat from the other 7 sects and fight us to the death?" Sun Mingyue asked calmly. Chu Li knew that she was testing him, so he put in more effort. "The Church of the Divine Blood thinks that we're not worth mentioning. They'll feel that their dignity has been violated if we offend them. They'll definitely fight us to the death. We're powerful enough. Will they still fight us?" "They will." "Are they really not afraid of the 7 sects? These people are crazy. Even if we injure them, the other 7 sects might not dare to attack us." Chu Li said calmly, "They usually use the blood god's disintegration technique that destroys indiscriminately. It's so powerful that it's almost impossible to escape, so they're like trapped beasts. Once provoked, they'll perish together. Each of the 7 sects will be wary of the other 6 sects and won't dare to act recklessly. If that's the case, no one dares to provoke the Church of the Divine Blood? No one wants to provoke a lunatic," Chu Li said calmly. "Otherwise, the stargazing pavilion won't cooperate with us. The 8 sects of the Fu dynasty and the martial arts world have never respected the Holy Church." Sun Mingyue said, "If that's the case, we can only cooperate." Chu Li sighed and nodded helplessly. "We have no other choice." "All right, we'll cooperate then," Sun Mingyue said. Chu Li smiled. His words were exactly what she wanted. She had already made up her mind. Chapter 3197. Just as both of them were determined to work together, Du Ying's voice came from outside. "Saint, there's a young Master Li Xinghe at the foot of the mountain who wishes to see you." Chu Li frowned. "He's quite fast," Sun Mingyue said. "Invite him in." "Yes." Du Ying responded and left. "This Li Xinghe is a powerful figure, isn't he?" Sun Mingyue gracefully sat behind the long table and put on a white veil to cover her beautiful face, revealing only her limpid eyes that were captivating. Chu Li nodded. "It should be the stargazing pavilion's words. You have the right to pretend you didn't hear their nasty words." Chu Li frowned. "So extreme? For the sake of the bigger picture, you have to bear with it even if you're mistreated." Sun Mingyue said, "Priest Lu and Dharma King have good tempers, but you're too impulsive. Don't ruin our plan." "All right." Chu Li slowly nodded. Sun Mingyue waved her hand. "That's settled then. Go rest in the spirit medicine nursery. Chu Li fist saluted and left. Chu Li refined 2 furnaces of pills in the spirit medicine nursery, and 3 days passed. He was about to refine another furnace of pills when Duing fluttered over and invited him to the Divine Light Basilica. In the Divine Light Palace, Lu Chenyu and Fang Qingyang were both seated in a row of armchairs to the right of Sun Mingyue. On the armchairs on the other side, 4 young girls in green robes sat quietly, their postures elegant and dignified. Chu Li's gaze uncontrollably drifted over and sized up the 4 of them. The 4 young ladies in green looked exactly the same, as if they were carved from the same mold. Their height and weight were identical as well. Chu Li's omniscient mirror could observe down to the smallest detail, and he could tell that something was amiss, but it was difficult for ordinary people. Chu Li's gaze roamed over their faces, and the 4 ladies immediately glared at him. They all had oval faces, curved eyebrows, cherry lips, and fine noses. Their facial features were exquisite and beautiful, making them pitiful. However, their gazes were unusually fierce. When they looked over, Chu Li felt as if 8 cold knives were cutting his face. "How dare you!" the last young lady in green shouted and suddenly slapped him. Chu Li took a step back and dodged the slap easily. "How dare you!" the last young lady in green shouted and slapped him again. Chu Li took another step back to avoid the attack. Sun Mingyue coughed lightly and said indifferently, "Holy King Zhao, you've been rude." Chu Li calmly gave a fist salute. "Greetings, Saint. Who are these 4 ladies?" The 2 green-robed girls' attacks failed, so they glared at him angrily. The other 2 girls looked at him indifferently. Their gazes roamed around his body like the tip of a sword, trying to probe him. Chu Li stood there in a relaxed manner. There was not a single hole in his body. This made the 2 women frown inwardly. They didn't expect to run into a sword master. "Senior Sister Qiu, Senior Sister Dong, he's Zhao Daif, Zhao Fuang," Sun Mingyue said. She then said to Chu Li, "The 4 senior sisters from the White Lotus Palace are here to help. Mei Chunmei, Xia Meiqiu, Mei Dong, don't be rude." Chu Li gave a fist salute. "Ah, so it's the heroine of the Rosy Palace. I apologize for my lack of manners." The 4 women stared at him without blinking. "Saintess, young Master Li is here." Du Ying's voice came from outside. Chapter 3198. "Young Master Li, please come in," Sun Mingyue said plainly. She was secretly furious, but as the saint, she could only hold it in for now lest she ruin the plan. Chu Li took a step forward and scoffed. "Young Master Li, this isn't Stargazing Pavilion." A blue silhouette flashed and Li Xinghe appeared in the basilica. He gave Sun Mingyue a fist salute and chuckled. "Please don't be offended if I've been rude, Saint. I've always been like this and I can't change this habit even in Stargazing Pavilion." He then looked at the 4 women from the church and gave them a fist salute. "Ladies, I, Li Xinghe, am pleased to meet you. As expected of a disciple of the church, it's no exaggeration to say that you're an outstanding beauty." Mei Chun and the other 3 women glared at him coldly. "Lecture." Xia Dong scoffed and suddenly swung his palm in the same manner as when he was dealing with Chu Li. Li Xinghe extended his palm and slapped it lightly, silently dispersing the palm energy, demonstrating his fine control over his inner energy. The 4 women narrowed their eyes slightly and felt a chill in their hearts. Li Xinghe did not even look at Chu Li. He spoke to Sun Mingyue and the 4 women, ignoring Chu Li as if he did not exist. He also ignored Fang Qingyang and Lu Chenyu. As soon as he stepped into the Divine Light Basilica, he overshadowed Chu Li and the other 3 men. He behaved elegantly and calmly with the demeanor of a master, overshadowing Chu Li and the other 2 men. Sun Mingyue nodded. "Young Master Li, you've come at the right time. The 4 senior sisters from the Church of the Divine Blood are here to help." Have you deduced that the masters from the Church of the Divine Blood have entered the Li dynasty? They're already lying in ambush near the Great Light Peak and are preparing to deal with the disciples of the Holy Church of Light. It's best to act as soon as possible to prevent the disciples from being harmed. Li Xinghe said seriously. Can you accurately deduce their location? Sun Mingyue asked seriously. Of course. Li Xinghe smiled proudly. I'll lead the way. Everyone, let's go together. Thank you, young Master Li, Sun Mingyue said. Li Xinghe stood up and walked out. Sun Mingyue got up and walked down the stairs. She arrived in front of Mei Chun and the other 3 girls. She extended her hand in invitation. The 4 women stood up gracefully and walked out with Sun Mingyue. Chu Li and the other 2 were the last to leave. Fang Qingyang gave Chu Li a look, signaling him to be patient and bear with it. Chu Li took a deep breath and nodded slowly. If he couldn't control himself now, he would be ignoring the bigger picture. No matter how much Sun Mingyue tolerated him, she wouldn't let him off easily. Li Xinghe had made use of this point to humiliate him. This debt could be settled in the future. Chu Li secretly thought about how he could find an opportunity to teach Li Xinghe a lesson and let him know how powerful he was. However, they were currently in a period of cooperation, so he needed Li Xinghe to predict and could not make a move. The 9 of them glided down the Great Light Peak and ran for hundreds of miles before they stopped in front of a peach blossom forest. Li Xinghe turned his head and said, Saintess, there are 6 of them. If we go over with so many people, they will probably run away. Sun Mingyue looked at him with a frown. Chu Li said, The masters from the Church of the Divine Blood are very brave. They won't run away. There's no harm in being careful. Li Xinghe didn't even look at him as he continued to look at Sun Mingyue. Actually, it's best to send someone over first to lure them into making a move before we rush over. Chu Li did not wait for him to point out who it was. Instead, he said, Saint, I'm afraid it's the 6 fellows who were chasing after me. I'll go and keep them busy. Sun Mingyue looked at Li Xinghe. Li Xinghe chuckled and said, They're the 6 masters who were chasing after Brother Zhao earlier. Can Brother Zhao handle them alone? Don't hurt yourself. Chu Li smiled faintly. I really can't do it alone. Young Master Li, let's go together. Me? Li Xinghe was stunned. Chu Li said, When I was dealing with them with young Master Li earlier, young Master Li escaped first and left me behind to bring up the rear. You won't run away this time and leave me behind, will you? Hee, alright. Then we'll deal with these 6 fellows for a while. You guys can come later. Li Xinghe noticed that Sun Mingyue's gaze was strange. He coughed softly and said, Everyone, you must be careful of these people. Be especially careful of the blood god's disintegration technique. Chu Li said, Young Master Li, please lead the way. Li Xinghe smiled at Sun Mingyue and the 4 ladies before he turned to leave. Follow me. Chu Li followed Li Xinghe and rushed out. Lu Chenyu smiled. This young Master Li from Stargazing Pavilion is quite capable, but he's still too young. Fang Qingyang shook his head. He could not stand Li Xinghe and smiled. Given Priest Zhao's temper, it's rare for him to be able to hold it in. Sun Mingyue glared at the 2 of them. Mei Chun and the other ladies did not even look at them. Lu Chenyu and Fang Qingyang understood Sun Mingyue's gaze and quickly shut their mouth. Fang Qingyang said, Saint Priest Lu and I will go too. Alright, go ahead. Sun Mingyue waved her hand. The 2 of them rushed out and chased after Li Xinghe and Chu Li. They soon caught up to them. Chu Li did not reject them when he saw that they were following him. He told them in a low voice about the Church of the Divine Blood's master's techniques, especially the blood god's finger, and how they should deal with it. As soon as the 4 of them walked out of the peach blossom forest, a whistling sound could be heard as a finger force formed a net and shrouded them. Chu Li waved his fist and shouted, Charge! Li Xinghe's blue robe fluttered as he launched palm after palm in an endless stream. His small star palm was firm and pure, and the palm forces overlapped to form a shield to block the blood god's finger. Lu Chenyu and Chu Li had already received the warning. Like Chu Li, they continued to launch their fists while their bodies followed the fist force and charged forward. Their fist forces blocked in front of them and became extremely firm after layers of overlapping. This was the wonder of the divine light fist. Although it was the first time the three of them had worked together, they were well coordinated. Their fist forces overlapped to form a mountain of fists in front of them. Li Xinghe chuckled and disappeared in a flash. He appeared on a treetop in the distance and looked down at them fighting. Chu Li turned his head and ignored him. The three of them immediately fell into a tough battle. Although the Sixth Church of the Divine Blood's Masters were weaker than Chu Li, they were stronger than Fang Qingyang and the others. One of them could suppress them to the point of suffocation. Now that two of them were attacking them at the same time, they were soon in danger. Chu Li was not at a disadvantage, even though he was fighting two people at the same time. He shouted, "Young Master Li, are you going to watch us die? Your Holy Church of Light's priest is too weak." Li Xinghe shook his head disapprovingly and launched two small star palms. A ray of starlight fell from the sky and condensed into the small star palm. It did not loosen due to the distance but was still firm and pure. Its power did not diminish, causing the Church of the Divine Blood's Masters to take a step back in fear. Lu Chenyu and Fang Qingyang immediately heaved a sigh of relief. "Brother Zhao, put in more effort to eliminate them so that the saint doesn't have to do anything," Li Xinghe said with a smile. Chu Li was filled with rage, but he suppressed it forcefully. He could not bear to wait until they had cooperated. He had to find a chance to settle the score with them first. The round-faced elder frowned and scoffed. "The saint of the Holy Church of Light? I'd like to see her for myself." Chu Li said coldly, "How arrogant." These 6 people obviously did not take the Holy Church of Light seriously. Even though they knew it was a trap, they did not care and were eager to make a move. Another Church of the Divine Blood's Master laughed. "I heard that the saint of the Holy Church of Light is a great beauty. Wouldn't it be great if we could capture her?" "Ha ha." The other 5 elders laughed. Lu Chenyu's expression darkened while Fang Qingyang flew into a rage. "You're courting death." His figure suddenly sped up, drifting unpredictably like a ghost. "You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.